Chapter 357. Today's bathroom, even the entire room, the entire manor, to put it bluntly, was a giant cage prepared to trap Ryuto. Insidious methods such as putting a high concentration of anesthetic in the water tank were actually everywhere in the manor, including the pavilion where Long Do had stayed when he first came in. There weren't many things that could be eaten. Although Ryuto had been very cautious since he came in and didn't eat anything carelessly, but as the saying goes, you can't hide forever. As long as the number of traps was enough, then there would always be one that could catch the prey. Wouldn't that be a success? From the sound of water coming from the bathroom and the water stains on Ryuto's body that hadn't dried yet, it could be seen. He obviously used the shower head here to take a shower, and the mixture of anesthetic also seeped into the young man's body. Ayam couldn't be more familiar with the effect of the anesthetic. Even an elephant would be paralyzed on the spot. So at this moment, she looked at Ryuto, who was leaning against the wall as if she was looking at a toy that was about to fall into her hands. Not good. My hand. My body is starting to go numb. Just as Ayam walked over with a smile, Ryuto felt his body go numb. The familiar feeling of powerlessness from before appeared on his body again. 30 seconds. From the time Ryuto backtracked until he felt something strange in his body, about 30 seconds had passed. With this amount of time, it was actually a little difficult to find a specific medicine in the Krypton shopping mall that was as vast as a sea of items. But fortunately, if the first time didn't work, Ryuto could do it a second, third, and fourth time. Bang! So at the moment when Ayam didn't react, he didn't hesitate to slap his heart. Before the anesthetic took effect, his heart was crushed. Hiss! Ryuto-kun. You actually... When Ryuto fell down, he seemed to see Ayam angrily saying something, but it had nothing to do with him. Detected that the host is on the verge of death, initiating emergency rescue plan by spending 1 million to erase the fact of death. Beep 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 beep. Erase successful. When Ryuto opened his eyes again, he had already appeared at the place where he originally stood. In his hand was the phone that had just finished transferring the money. But after backtracking this time, Ryuto immediately opened the Krypton shopping mall and frantically searched inside. 30 seconds. This was the time limit of Ryuto's backtracking. Every time he exceeded this time, the poison in his body would activate and he would become weak. Even suicide would require a lot of effort. Therefore, Long Do decided to use this time to commit suicide and backtrack. He also kept looking for things he needed in the Krypton shopping mall. Under these circumstances, the scene in the bathroom became somewhat became comical. Ryuto-kun. Are you done showering? Hurry up and come out. SSS, Ryuto-kun. You actually... Ryuto-kun. Are you done showering? Hurry up and come out. SSS. Ryuto-kun. You actually... Every time Ayam opened the door, she would repeat the same sentence. Then, not long after, Ryuto would slap himself in the chest and look at her running towards him with a shocked expression. Because he had repeated this process countless times, Long Do was even a little annoyed looking at Yongji's face. But fortunately, in the end, he still managed to find the rogue detoxification pill that could cure the poison. The price of this pill was not expensive, but it was mixed in with a bunch of messy items. It took a lot of effort to find it. Very good, I got it. Thus, after spending money to buy the detoxification pill, Long Do, who had retraced his steps, swallowed it without hesitation. Then, he changed his clothes as fast as he could and waited for Yongji's Gu Mao hut. Squeak. After a while, accompanied by the sound of the door being pushed open, a pair of eyes that sent chills down his spine appeared in the gap of the door. Ryuto-kun. You still haven't. Without waiting for Ayam to finish the sentence that Ryuto was sick of hearing, Ryuto smiled first and said, I'm done showering, I'll come out now. Before he finished, he did not wait for Ayam, who was lying at the door, to respond. He took the initiative to open the bathroom door and walked out. Oh, this guy is quite honest. Seeing Ryuto quickly ran to the side of the bed and did not hesitate to sit on the bed, Ayam's mouth could not help but raise a strange smile. However, even though Long Do seemed to be taking the initiative to do it with her, Yongji naturally wouldn't let him do as he wished. She was the one who needed to take the initiative. How could she let a mere man take the initiative? Calculating the time, it was about time. He should be about to fall. Therefore, when she also walked gracefully to the bed, Ayam was secretly calculating the time in her heart. As expected, before she could reach the bedside, Long Do suddenly frowned. Then, his entire body went limp, and like a noodle, he softly fell onto the pink bed. He quickly glared at Ayam and said angrily, You poisoned me? Aya, don't make it sound so bad. This is just a means to liven things up. Ayam lightly came to Ryuto's side, sat on the bed, and rubbed his frowning eyebrows. Her tone was also full of ridicule. Because of the mixed anesthetic, Ryuto could only lie on the bed motionlessly. He slowly asked, You plan to… What do you plan to me? Don't worry, I won't kill you. I will slowly love you and treat you as the most fun toy in the world, until I get tired of playing with you. Speaking until here, Ayam gently leaned her head on Ryuto's chest and reached out to hug his neck, looking like a girl in love. If one were to simply look at this scene, the scene of a handsome man and a beautiful woman leaning against each other was simply as beautiful as a painting. Unfortunately, the great evil hidden behind was enough to completely destroy this painting. Ayam didn't tell Ryuto what would happen when he was tired of playing with her, but the answer was self-evident. One word was enough to describe it, and it was the kind of death that would be very miserable. Of course, Ayam wouldn't think about this for the time being. She was only immersed in the joy of getting a new toy. However, just as this naughty child, who thought she had gotten a new toy, was about to lean her head forward and try out the wonderful feeling of chirp, a pair of strong palms locked her soft and fragrant shoulders like lightning. Gotcha! Before Ayam could react, the warm palms forcefully pulled from her shoulders. With an extremely ingenious method, her shoulder joint was dislocated. With the shoulder joint dislocated, Ayam's arm was completely immobile from the shoulder down. At the same time, intense pain quickly rushed to the nerves of this demon king. But it wasn't over yet. Ryuto, who was originally under her body, immediately hugged her crystal-clear legs that were exposed from the knee-length skirt. Accompanied by a series of cracking sounds, he also dislocated Ayam's knee joint. The whole process lasted less than a second. In just such a short period of time, Ayam went from being in an active position to being in a passive position, and in the blink of an eye, she lost all ability to move. Don't stare at me like that. I won't kill you for the time being, don't worry. After sitting up from the bed, Ryuto reached out and patted Ayam's head that was tilted on the bed, and said to her in a teasing tone. And when the joints of her arms and legs were dislocated, and she fell on the bed like a puppet with broken strings, Ayam's eyes were filled with disbelief. No effect. How is that possible? The medicine department's specially mixed anesthetic didn't have any effect on him at all? Although he didn't know what had happened, this unbelievable scene had actually happened. Because this situation was too magical, it was no wonder that even Ayam couldn't figure out what was going on. Who would have thought that Ryuto had repeatedly committed suicide for this moment? She could only ask in confusion, You already knew that I would poison you? Or do you have special antibodies in your body? Ryuto heard this and laughed. That's not the point. The point is that you are now in my hands, and your group of subordinates are still far away. In other words, you are now my toy, understand? Ryuto's tone was light and had a strong sense of superiority. As he spoke, he reached out his finger and gently stroked Ayam's cheek with the back of his finger, as if he was stroking a cat at home. This was not a gentle caress between lovers, but a one-sided enjoyment by the dominant over the dominated. Ever since Yongji was born, she had never experienced such a feeling of being controlled by someone, of being manipulated at will. As she felt Ryuto's finger slowly slide down her cheek, to her swan-like slender neck, and continue down, she couldn't help but feel a strong sense of shame and indignation. Shame and indignation, shame and indignation. Shame and indignation, shame and indignation, shame and indignation, shame and indignation, shame and indignation. She was actually being played with like a doll. Anger at Ryuto, this bastard, actually dared to play with her like a doll. The strong sense of shame and indignation made Ayam's face flush red, and she couldn't help but curse, "Ryuto Kiryu. Kill me if you dare." Ayam originally wanted to say, "Kill me if you dare," but who knew that before she could finish her sentence, Ryuto grinned and lowered his head to cover her small mouth that was about to protest loudly. This wasn't a gentle chirp between lovers, but a one-sided plunder between the plunderer and the plunderer. It was plunder, the same two people, but unfortunately, their identities and positions were completely reversed. Ayam had never thought that chirp would be so infuriating, so humiliating that it made people want to kill the other party 100 times on the spot. This feeling of being plundered and enjoyed was the biggest humiliation Ayam had ever suffered. It made her so angry that she wanted to die on the spot. Chapter 358. The Dominator and the Dominated. The Plunderer and the Plundered. These characters, when faced with the same situation, their reactions and attitudes were naturally completely different. Since who knew how long ago, Yongji had been a ruler and a raider, a high and mighty character, just like the empress of the old era. Her temperament was changeable, and her methods were cruel. She never needed to consider the consequences of her actions, and killing people was as easy as crushing an ant. Such a Tenmu Ayam, it could be said that she never thought from the perspective of the dominated and plundered, just like how a wolf would not think from the perspective of a sheep. This world is my hunting ground, and I am the hunter here. All the creatures here were born to be dominated by me, plundered by me, and killed by me. In Ayam's heart, she clearly had this degree of arrogance, the kind of strong arrogance that seemed to be standing in the clouds, looking down on all humans from high above. However, at this moment, the man who was holding her chin and plundering her body with a smile tore Ayam's arrogance and dignity to pieces. Ryuto. F*CKU #yen% #sujuawayak. At this moment, Ayam, whose limbs could not move and head was firmly held, could not struggle at all. She could only make some vague ancient god language, trying to express her anger and dissatisfaction. But Ryuto did not plan to pay attention to her anger, and carefully, bit by bit, he thoroughly tasted Ayam, as if he was tasting a cup of old poisoned wine. How long did this humiliating situation last? Ayam did not know, she only knew that every second of the torture felt like a year. When Ryuto finally let her go, this woman had already fallen on the bed in a daze, her eyes empty, swollen cherry lips slightly open, looking like there was nothing left to live for. After a moment, Ayam said in a weak but bitter tone, "Kill you. I will use the cruelest method to kill you." She used the softest expression to say the harshest words. At this moment, Ayam was very different from her usual domineering and even crazy self. However, it was this attitude that made her words seem especially true. The current Ayam was no longer crazy. She was truly going crazy. Originally, she had invited Ryuto, this prey, into the manor, and even prepared a bunch of capture settings. She wanted to capture this rare man she liked as a plaything and play with him wantonly. But who would have thought that Yongji would be the one to be caught, and she would even be toyed with by her own plaything. It was as if you wanted to catch a cat, but it threw you back into the cage and played with you with a cat teaser outside. It was a great humiliation. It could be said that Ayam had never been so humiliated in her life. So now Ayam was too lazy to think about treating Ryuto as a plaything. She was thinking about how to kill this man, ruthlessly kill him. Although her posture was like a vengeful spirit from hell, Ryuto sneered and said, "Are you an idiot? Now it's not you who wants to kill me, but I want to kill you. Think about whether you can survive first before saying anything else." After being mercilessly ridiculed by Ryuto, Ayam, who was lying on the bed and looking at the ceiling, gritted her teeth, but she couldn't refute a word. After all, what Ryuto said was the truth. Now Ayam was the one who was caught and thrown into the cage. There were indeed a lot of traps in this room, but in the situation where her hands and feet couldn't move, Ayam couldn't trigger those traps at all. She couldn't even shout at her subordinates outside. Speaking of which, the only thing Ayam could rely on now was the heartbeat bomb, connected to her heartbeat. There was a special chip installed in Yongji's heart. As long as her heart stopped beating, the chip would send out a message for the bomb to explode. At that time, the entire manor and all living creatures within a certain range of the manor would not be able to survive. But Ayam knew this trump card, and so did Ryuto. So, he didn't plan to kill Ayam here, otherwise, it would only be a waste of his previous efforts. After taking a few steps back, Ryuto looked at the woman on the bed wearing a light spaghetti strap nightgown, shook his head, and said, "You're not dressed well. Change into something that can be seen." Before he finished, he ran to the side of the wardrobe and rummaged through it. After finding a set of seemingly ordinary clothes, he walked towards Ayam. Seeing him walk over with the clothes, Ayam couldn't help but be angry. "What do you want to do? Don't tell me you want to change. Woo-woo. Don't be noisy. You are now in a state of being kidnapped. You don't have the right to speak." After taking a handkerchief and stuffing the woman's mouth, Ryuto shook his finger at her. But Ayam immediately stuck out her tongue and spat out the handkerchief that was stuffed into her mouth. She mocked, "Please have some common sense. Using a handkerchief or something like that won't be able to shut someone's mouth. Do you think you are in a TV show? Thanks for the reminder. Pa." So in the next moment, Ryuto, who was ridiculed, took out the familiar hooligan Velcro and stuck Ayam's mouth firmly. She could only struggle with woo-woo sounds. After that, it was the Barbie doll costume show that Ryuto had never played before. Because Ayam was wearing a light and seductive nightgown, she really couldn't go out to see people. Ryuto kindly helped her change into a set of clothes so that he could kidnap her out. Otherwise, it would be easy to cause serious misunderstandings. But in the process of helping her change, Ayam's eyes were always burning with murderous intent, but she couldn't do anything about it. She could only secretly mock Ryuto in her heart. After changing Ayam's clothes, Ryuto picked her up and smiled. "Okay, let's go out for a walk now." "Woo-woo, woo-woo. Go out. Where to?" "Of course to go out of the manor. I don't feel at ease in your territory. Why don't you come to my house as a guest?" What? Go out of the manor? This. The moment she heard this sentence, Ayam's eyes suddenly widened, and her body began to struggle violently. You know, in this manner, she still had her biggest trump card, Heartbeat Bomb. If she died, she could drag Ryuto down with her. That could be considered as revenge. But if she was dragged out of the manor by Ryuto, then Ayam would really die in vain. She wouldn't even have the chance to take revenge. Speaking of which, Ayam was actually not afraid of death. She was afraid of dying in vain. If she could take Long Do with her when she died, that would be acceptable. Otherwise, it would be an earth-shattering loss for her. She would lose everything she had. Although Ayam was a pervert, she couldn't lose her underwear, right? So when she was carried out of the room by Ryuto, she couldn't help but be furious. Her originally beautiful face was flushed red, and she looked like she was about to be suffocated by a hooligan's Velcro around her mouth. But although Ayam's movements were loud, Ryuto didn't care about her. Instead, he opened the door openly. And the moment he opened the door, the surveillance camera in the corridor not far away directly shone in this direction. There were surveillance cameras everywhere in this manor, and enemies were everywhere. If Ryuto wanted to take away Ayam quietly, it was definitely impossible. He could only take the route of breaking through by force. So at this time, Ryuto walked out while wearing a small communicator in his ear and pressed the communication button. Beep beep. Almost a second later, this special communication channel was connected directly to Colored Glaze in the distant command center. The moment the communication was connected, Colored Glaze first breathed a sigh of relief, then quickly asked, "Phew. Ryuto, what's the situation now?" Speaking of which, Ryuto had been in this manor for quite some time. If there was still no news from his side, Colored Glaze and the others were already considering whether to attack or not. "I'm fine." Ryuto smiled and said, "I just became a real kidnapper and was about to kidnap Ayam. It seems that you have to help me." "Kidnap Ayam? Kidnap her?" Hearing this sentence, Colored Glaze in the command center hurriedly felt joy in her heart, and then she was shocked. She said, "I'll immediately arrange for a large force to go in and provide support. Don't act recklessly for the time being. Just stabilize the situation first." Color Glaze was not stupid. After hearing Ryuto's words, she knew that he had already restrained Ayam, but the manor was the nest of the Heavenly Eye group, and there were all kinds of enemies inside. It was definitely a life-threatening task to kidnap her, and it was definitely impossible to rely on Ryuto alone. Understood, I should be fine here for the time being, hurry up and come over. Master Ayam. Damn it. Just as Ryuto said, hurry up and come over to provide support, he was walking in the carpeted corridor in the big house with Ayam in his arms, and he happened to hear an angry shout from the other end of the corridor. Ryuto looked up and saw that Lin Hua had already appeared at the other end of the corridor with a group of mercenary guards, and she was rushing over here aggressively. Someone is coming. I'll hang up first. After being quickly blocked, Ryuto hung up the communication device after informing Colored Glaze. Then he looked at the guard department head, Teshima Lin Hua, who was angrily looking at him. That's right, the one who appeared at this time was the guard department head, Teshima Lin Hua, and not the perverted female Lin Hua that Ryuto knew before. When she saw that her boss was kidnapped, even Lin Hua immediately went into work mode, and she picked up a pistol from her waist and pointed it at Ryuto's head. Chapter 359. Longdo knew very well that Toku Shimarin Hana had two identities. In private, she was a perverted woman who liked handsome men and strange things, as well as Union's cousin and Ryuto's partner. In public, she was the head of the Heavenly Eye Group Guard Department, and also a chess piece sent by Ayam to the official side. Ryuto understood Lin Hua's mood and attitude very well, and also understood her action of raising a gun at him at this time. But even so, Ryuto still smiled and said, "Put that thing down, this alone can't threaten me." "Oh, is that so?" Lin Hua still held the gun in her hand steadily, and the head of the gun pointed directly at Ryuto's head, and said sternly, "How do you know if you don't try?" Her white and slender fingers were tightly clasped on the trigger. Although she was holding the gun with one hand, the muzzle was abnormally stable, and there was no sway at all, which showed how amazing her shooting ability was. At this distance of less than 5 meters, Lin Hua could hit any of Ryuto's hair, so naturally, it was impossible to hurt Ayam-sama who was in his arms. Generally speaking, a robber like Ryuto should hold a hostage in front of him as a shield, so that the other party would hesitate to shoot the rat for fear of breaking the vases. But he didn't have this intention at all. Instead, he reached out and touched Ayam's soft hair, and said to Lin Hua, "It doesn't make any sense for you to stop me here. No one can take this guy away from me." "Humph, you seem to be very confident." "I'm indeed very confident, because I know you, and how much ability you have." The moment Ryuto said the second half of the sentence, his right hand, which was originally holding Ayam's neck, whipped backward like lightning. In the narrow space, the arm was swung backward like a long whip. It was as fast as the raging waves, and also like the wind and thunder. The speed and power of this whip were extremely amazing. With only one arm, the momentum of a whip was actually unleashed. Pa! In the next second, a crisp sound accompanied by a whistling sound could be heard. A man who had unknowingly approached Ryuto's back and was about to launch a sneak attack was also sent flying by the whip. Plop! The man fell to the ground and quickly got up. His eyes were filled with anger and bloodshot as he glared at Longdo. This man was naturally the head of the intelligence department of the Heavenly Eye Group, Cathouse Sherhuan En, who was waiting here with Lin Hua. However, right now, Huan En's face was splattered with blood. Half of her face had been torn apart by the whip. That kind of bloody situation looked very frightening. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. From the moment Ryuto released Ayam's neck to the moment he returned to his original position to support Ayam's neck, the entire process was so fast that no one could see what had happened. However, there was one thing that everyone could see. The leader of the Black Wings Ninja had launched a surprise attack on Ryudo and slapped him away as if he was swatting a fly. He even disfigured Ryudo. Of course, in the eyes of others, Huan En's bloody face was really embarrassing, but Huan En knew that this was the result of his successful dodge at the last moment. If it weren't for Huan En's reaction speed that was close to the human limit and quickly twisted his waist, that whip might have sent his head flying. This guy. What kind of monster is he? Why does he feel so much stronger than the last time we met? At this time, Huanan looked at Ryuto, who still had his back facing him, as if he had seen a ghost. He couldn't help but secretly clench his teeth, and at the same time, his purely mechanical right arm slowly raised a little. After being broken by Long Do a few months ago, Huan and An's right arm had become a mechanical arm that was equipped with all kinds of high-tech weapons. There were poison needles, automatic rifles, smoke bombs, small rockets, and so on. There were all kinds of weapons. But even so, Long Do couldn't be bothered to look at him. Instead, he sneered without turning his head, "With those lousy things of yours. It's better if you don't take them out and embarrass yourself." After that, he swaggered all the way forward with Iam in his arms, toward Lin Hua and the dozens of mercenary guards behind her. Seeing Ryuto arrogantly walking toward her, Lin Hua couldn't help but frown and said, "Don't move. Otherwise, we will really shoot." Whoosh! Before her voice died away, a group of mercenary guards behind her also raised their standard submachine guns and aimed at Ryuto in a very professional posture. The dozens of people's movements were like one person. A group of mercenary troops personally led by the head of the guard department must be the best of the best in terms of combat effectiveness. They could shoot wherever they wanted. But when so many guns were pointed at him, Ryuto was too lazy to show any signs of fear. Instead, he smiled and slightly retracted his hand that was holding Iam's neck. Crack! In an instant, there was a sound of bones rubbing against each other from Iam's slender neck. Although there was still a little distance between them, in this corridor that was so dead silent that even a pin drop on the carpet could be heard, the sound clearly entered everyone's ears. 1 second. After that, Ryuto smiled at Lin Hua and said, "If I want to take her life, it will take at most 1 second. You can bet on whether the bullet will fly faster or I will crush your boss' neck faster." It had to be said that these words sounded a little silly and pretentious. After all, normal people would not use 1 second as a unit of measurement. But Ryuto was not joking, nor was he being silly. He could indeed do this in such a short amount of time. From the scene where he sent Huan and flying like lightning and disfigured her face, it was clear that this was the case. Damn it! Lin Hua naturally knew about Ryuto's ability. He could only grit his teeth and said, "What do you want? Give me your conditions." "There are no conditions. I just want to get out of here alive. It's that simple. It's that simple. As long as I can leave this manor safely, I will immediately release Iam. You won't refuse such a condition, right?" Hearing this, Lin Hua decisively replied, "No problem, I can make the decision to let you go, as long as you immediately release Iam after leaving the manor." Ryuto heard this and laughed. Hee, that's for sure. If I touch her, won't I be chased down 9 streets? I'm timid and can't take this kind of shock. Logically speaking, Lin Hua's reply was actually not a problem. After all, in this terrible situation where the boss was being held hostage, the first thing to protect was the boss's life. Even if Lin Hua did not know that there was a heartbeat bomb under the manor, it was still the same. However, the moment Lin Hua agreed, Iam, who was in Ryuto's arms, glared at Lin Hua desperately, as if she wanted to convey some information to him. Speaking of which, Iam could not speak now. If she could speak, she would probably scold Lin Hua on the spot. "Are you kidding me? Let Ryuto leave the manor? Make a deal with this bastard? Is there something wrong with his brain?" In Iam's view, she did not believe that Ryuto would let her go after leaving the manor. On the contrary, as soon as she left here and left the threat range of the heartbeat bomb, this guy might immediately take her life. For some reason, Iam always felt that Ryuto seemed to know that there was a big bomb buried under the manor, so he had no intention of killing her in the manor. However, this situation could only be maintained until Ryuto left the manor. If Ryuto really held Iam hostage outside the manor, then Iam was sure that he would immediately kill her in the next moment and twist her neck into a fried dough twist. The most wonderful thing was that after that, he could still watch Lin Hua, Huanan, and others in the manor being directly sent to the sky by the heartbeat bomb. What being chased down 9 streets, what being timid, it was simply bullsh*t. Thinking of this, Iam, who was held in his arms, couldn't help but struggle violently. At the same time, Her mouth that was wrapped by Velcro also made woo, woo. At this moment, what Iam wanted to express was, I can't let him take me out. Otherwise, everything will be over. But in Lin Hua's view, Master Iam was just unwilling to let Ryuto go like this. She would even risk her life to keep him here. So she persuaded, Master Iam. It's more important that you can get out of danger than anything else. Let's talk about other things after that. Woo, wait. Woo, it's only after he takes me out that my life will be in danger. Although Iam tried hard to send a message to Lin Hua with woo and eyes, the reality was that she couldn't send the correct message. The biggest problem here was that Iam knew about the existence of the heartbeat bomb, but Lin Hua and others didn't know. They didn't know that as long as Ryuto left the manor, he could really do whatever he wanted. He could twist Iam's head in any direction he wanted. On the other hand, as long as they stayed in the manor, Ryuto couldn't kill them, because it would only cost his own life. For this, Ryuto himself was naturally the most clear. Thus, when he saw Yongji continuously struggling in his arms, he laughed softly beside her ear. Don't shout. It's useless. You can only blame yourself for hiding everything. Now you're in big trouble, aren't you? You deserve it. As soon as the words, deserve it, came out, Ryuto smiled and continued to carry Iam forward. Looking at the way he swaggered out, it was as if the large circle of mercenaries and black feather ninjas around him were air. In this situation, how could he be so arrogant? But at this moment, Iam, who was in Ryuto's arms, immediately calmed down. Her two shifty eyes turned, as if she had thought of a way to fight back. Chapter 360. Although the current situation was absolutely unfavorable for Yongji, she had not reached the point where she had to surrender without a fight. Her shoulder joint was dislocated, her knee joint was dislocated, and Ryuto's hand was still clasped behind Iam's neck. She was like a death god's scythe that could fall at any time. Even so, Yongji still slowly closed her eyes and began to think quickly in her mind. I can't let him leave this manor, or I'll die for nothing. But I can't move my hands and feet. Iam wasn't Ryuto, she didn't really learn any martial arts, so naturally she couldn't use inner strength or Dan strength. So in this situation where she couldn't move her limbs, Iam could only use one move. Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da. But just as Ryuto carried Iam to the manor's spacious hall, a flurry of footsteps quickly came from outside. Taking a closer look, a large group of people was rushing in from outside the manor. The one leading them was a young girl with silver hair and a face as cute as a doll. Behind the girl were a group of fully armed mercenaries. They were wearing sunglasses, wearing windbreakers, carrying 2 battle axes, machine guns, and rocket launchers. Ryuto, are you okay? Ugh. After rushing into the manor and seeing Ryuto's figure, Dunya, who was running at the front, instinctively wanted to ask, but when she saw that her man was carrying a beautiful woman, she suddenly felt awkward. Most people have never seen Tenmu Iam's true appearance, so even a woman like Dunya and the 4 Amon clan members behind her were stunned by the woman's appearance and temperament. What kind of stunning beauty is this? She's like a witch. After a pause, the leader of the Amon clan member, couldn't help but push up his sunglasses and said sincerely, Is this the time to talk about this? After a sigh, Ryuto, who just ran down from the 2nd floor, hurriedly ran toward Dunya's group. There were about 100 people in Dunya's vanguard who rushed into the manor to provide support. They were all the most elite teams of the Black Hand Alliance, and Luli had arranged for them to be stationed around the manor. In addition to this group of people, there was another large group of people surrounding the manor, and they were confronting the Tenmu group who had heard the news. Because Yongji was being held hostage, under Lin Hua's command, the surrounding members of the guard department also quickly rushed over after hearing the news. More and more troops from both sides gathered, as if the manor had become a huge barrel of gunpowder. And the center of the gunpowder barrel was naturally the main villa of this manor. Don't move. Don't go any further. Lin Hua and the others who came out with Long Do saw that Long Do was about to meet up with Dong Nia's group and immediately aimed their weapons at him. Whoosh! including all kinds of weapons that suddenly appeared from the vases, walls, and ceiling in the hall. At least a few hundred guns were aimed at Ryuto. Under such a dense net of fire, even if Ryuto was an Iron Man, a round of bullets would be able to turn him into a pile of mud. TSK. Suddenly, Ryuto could only stay in the center of the hall on the first floor. His position was about 50 meters away from the door where Dunya and the others were. It was not far, but it was not close either. Seeing Ryuto being pointed at by a bunch of guns, Dunya anxiously yelled, "Ryuto! I'm going to! Don't move! Don't come over!" Ryuto hurriedly made a stop gesture to Dunya, forbidding her from moving to the center of the hall. After all, this place was full of guns and traps. Dunya and the others were waiting at the door, but rashly rushing in was simply courting death. When they saw that Long Do had finally stopped, Lin Hua, Huan An, and the others who had caught up from behind also breathed a sigh of relief. They walked down the hall and surrounded Long Do. At this moment, the situation in the hall of the manor became very subtle. The leader of the Black Hand Alliance, Ryuto, stood in the center of the hall, holding the boss of the Heavenly Eye group, Iam. At the entrance of the hall stood Dunya, the Amen family, and a group of Black Hand Alliance elite members. Inside the hall stood Lin Hua, Huan An, and a group of Heavenly Eye group elite members. For a moment, these two groups of people formed a subtle balance in the spacious hall. Both sides pointed their weapons at each other, but opposite each side stood the important leaders of their own families. 400 eyes were staring at each other in the air. Sparks flew everywhere. Many people did not even dare to breathe loudly, for fear of breaking the balance. It was stuck. The image was stuck just like that. The current situation was that Ryuto wanted to go forward, but Lin Hua did not want him to go forward. Previously, they agreed that once Ryuto left the manor, Iam would be released. But if Ryuto met up with the Black Hand Alliance, then even if he left, it would be impossible to release Iam. So Lin Hua said sternly, "Ryuto Kiryu, tell your people to retreat. You can leave, but you must be escorted by us." On the other side, Dunya also retorted, "Are you an idiot? You call that escorting? You will definitely shoot Ryuto in the back. Shut up. This is not the time for a little girl like you to speak." How could Dunya be willing to suffer losses? After being scolded by Lin Hua, she immediately sneered, "Now your boss is in the hands of my boss. Why are you talking so loudly? Aren't you afraid that your boss's head will fall to the ground? How dare you? Why wouldn't I dare? Tenmu Iam is a scum who has done many evil things. It is God's blessing that she is still alive today. This kind of person should choke to death on the spot while eating." Stinky brat. You. Cough. Cough 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 cough. Before Lin Hua could scold back angrily, Iam, who was in Ryuto's arms, suddenly twitched violently. Traces of blood seeped out of the Velcro wrapped around her mouth, and at the same time, her face quickly swelled red. Woo! Woo 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 woo! At that moment, Iam began to struggle as if she was suddenly out of breath. Her eyes were wide open, and her neck kept making swallowing movements, but there seemed to be something stuck in her throat, causing her to be unable to breathe normally. What is this? It can't be so poisonous, right? When they saw this scene, Lin Hua and Dunya were almost stunned at the same time. Just now, Dunya said that this kind of person should choke to death on the spot while eating, and now Iam showed signs of choking to death? What is this? Was it the spirit language spell? Words were law. Of course, this situation was not the soul language spell, but Iam's last resistance. This girl bit her tongue to commit suicide? When he saw Iam in his arms, who seemed to be about to choke to death, Ryuto was shocked by her. Indeed, Iam basically couldn't do anything now, but the only thing she could do freely was to do something with her mouth, such as biting off her tongue. Generally, the scene of biting one's tongue to commit suicide in TV series was not the same as the scene in reality. Normally, biting off one's tongue would not kill one, but one might choke to death. After all, when the tongue was bitten off, the remaining half of the tongue in the mouth would retract to the back of the throat, blocking the trachea. Coupled with a large amount of blood and saliva mixed together, it was easy to suffocate to death. Especially in the case of Iam, whose mouth was already entangled with Velcro. As long as she bit off her tongue, she would basically choke to death. He, ha 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 ha. At this time, although Ayam was very uncomfortable from choking, her eyes were filled with a crazy smile. Ryuto Kiryu, don't you want my life? Then take it, but you and your cute little wife will have to accompany me to the Yellow Springs underworld. Ha 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 ha. Crazy, this girl is crazy. Ryuto naturally knew Ayam's thoughts. As long as she stopped her heart, the heartbeat bomb under the manor would immediately detonate. No one nearby would be able to escape. This kind of self-destructive move to kill 1,000 enemies was really not something a madman could do, but it did indeed push Ryuto to a desperate situation. Because when she saw the sudden change on Lady Ayam's side, as if she was about to choke to death, Lin Hana suddenly could not hold it in anymore. She obviously thought that this situation was caused by Ryuto, so she quickly shouted, "Fire! Fire! Kill them! Take back Lady Ayam!" With the order of Lin Hana, in addition to the group of mercenaries behind her and the group of black feather ninjas led by Huan En, the automatic machine guns and turrets and other defensive facilities around the hall also began to move quickly. Although this was very likely to hurt Lady Ayam, Lin Hana did not care so much. The situation was getting worse, so she might as well take the last gamble. Otherwise, she could only watch Lady Ayam die under Ryuto's dirty trick. Oh no, I can't dodge so many bullets. At that moment, Ryuto instinctively picked up Ayam, who was about to choke to death, and jumped to the side, but there happened to be a few machine gun turrets in front of him. The bullets of these automatic machine gun turrets hit Ryuto at such a close distance, and it could cause fatal injuries. The worst thing was that Ayam, who was in his arms, might also be killed by the turrets. As long as Ayam died, this game would be restarted. So many things before would be meaningless. So now Ryuto not only had to ensure that he did not die, but also that Ayam did not die. He also had to find a place to heal her as soon as possible. But the automatic machine gun turrets in front of him, Just as Ryuto was about to try to block the turret bullets with his arm in front of him, a strange sound suddenly came from the entire hall. Immediately afterward, the chandelier hanging at the top of the hall immediately went out, and the various turrets and defensive measures that were originally powered suddenly stopped moving. It seemed that someone had cut off the various electrical devices in the manor at this critical moment. The only one who could do this should be Sensible alone. Obviously, he had hacked into the manor at this time and cut off the power in the hall. Well done, Sensible. Seeing that the turret in front of him did not fire any bullets, Ryuto also quickly jumped forward with Ayam in his arms. He dodged the rain of bullets from Lin Hana's side and smashed open a corridor window leading to the second floor. Bang! With the sound of the window shattering, Ryuto and Ayam disappeared from the hall at the same time. Chapter 361. When Ryuto and Ayam jumped towards the second floor's corridor, half of the people in the room looked in that direction, while the other half didn't. Spread out! Spread out! In fact, the moment Lin Hana's mercenaries were about to open fire, the captain of the Dragon Fong squad, who was dispatched from the Rulong Security Company, gave the order to disperse. Bang! 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 For a moment, deafening gunshots were heard in the spacious hall. Lin Hana's guards raised their guns and fired back, while the Dragon Fong squad also returned fire under the command of their captain. The hall was suddenly filled with gunshots, and flames filled the air. From the moment the first round of gunshots were heard, this place was no longer a manor, but a battlefield, a place where people could die at any time. The Heavenly Eye Group's mercenaries were madly shooting at the door from across the hall, while the Dragon Fong squad was dodging and firing back. Because both sides were elite soldiers, only a few corpses were left after the first round of gunfire. More and more members from both sides began to surround and circle around, expanding the battlefield to cover the entire building, not just the hall. But just as the two sides were about to enter the battle zone, a few shadows quickly circled around the corridor from the back and chased after Ryuto through the window. The movement speed of these shadows was extremely special. They lowered their bodies and ran down the stairs to the second floor. Their speed was even faster than a sprinter, they were as fast as lightning. Chase them. We must catch up to Ayam, Sama. In that instant, the group of black shadows that rushed directly to the second floor was naturally Huan An and the elite, black feather ninja he led. After leaving a portion of the ninjas to deal with the battle in the hall, Huan An wanted to lead the elites to catch up to Ryuto and kill him. At the very least, they had to snatch back Sama. Because the Black Feathers ninjas were too fast and their movements were too stealthy, the Amon clan and the Dragon Fong squad didn't even notice their movements. Instead, they were focused on exchanging fire with the mercenaries of the guard department. But even if most of the people present didn't have the energy to deal with the situation on the other side, there was still one person who could catch up with the group of ninjas. At this time, Dunya, who was hiding behind a pillar in the hall, happened to see a few shadows rushing to the second floor, so she immediately said to Amon beside her, "I'll leave this place to you guys, I'm going up." "Don't worry, kill to your heart's content." The current head of the Amon clan nodded. Then, he took out a remote control car from somewhere and drove it to the opposite side of the hall. Boom! With a deafening explosion, Amon's remote car assassination technique directly exploded against the wall of the hall. Several guards were blown up into the air, and a large amount of dust was also raised. "Thanks." Dunya saw the situation and immediately lowered her body and ran out of the pillar. She rushed towards the direction where Ryuto went up the stairs. The place where Ryuto went up the stairs was above the wall of the hall on the first floor, and it happened to be where the window on the second floor was located. It was about 5 meters from the ground. Seeing a petite figure rushing towards the wall, the mercenaries quickly raised their assault rifles and pulled the trigger on Dunya without hesitation. Tut tut tut. Tut 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 tut. The continuous sound of gunfire followed by the rain of bullets enveloped Dunya's petite body, but she only slightly covered her head with her arms, and without hesitation, she jumped towards the broken window. Is this little girl crazy? The few people who saw this scene all had the same thought in that instant. The assault rifle bullets were already fired towards Dunya's direction, but she didn't dodge or run, and instead made a jumping action? This little girl shouldn't think that she is invulnerable to bullets, and that she can jump 5 or 6 meters from this distance, right? Well, in fact, Dunya did think so. Whoosh! Bang! The next moment, several bullets hit the petite body, including the arms, abdomen, legs, and so on. But what made the mercenaries' eyes widen was that the bullets hit the target, but at this time, there was no movement at all. It was no different from not hitting. Yes, the bullets hit, but Dunya's movements were not slowed at all, and there were no bullet holes or bleeding on her body, as if the bullets were just tickling her. Boom! Then, her seemingly slender right leg, which was stronger than an elephant, stepped on the ground, and an even more exaggerated scene appeared. In the hall, gunshots were heard everywhere, and smoke filled the air. Meanwhile, Dunya's petite body abruptly leaped into the air, reaching a height of more than 5 meters like a celestial being. She directly rushed into the glass window that Ryuto had just smashed. What the hell is this? Why is there a ghost in the middle of the day? The few mercenaries who were lucky enough to witness this scene were all dumbfounded, because this situation was completely beyond their understanding of humans. Indeed, that scene did seem a little exaggerated. After all, how could a living human not be afraid of assault rifle bullets, and still be able to jump 5 meters vertically? But the reason why Dunya was able to do this, other than her inhuman LV-5 physique, the 3 pieces of equipment that Ryuto gave her in Moscow were also very important. Rogue's gel body armor, together with her physique, could completely block most bullets. Rogue's supercharged gloves, together with her physique, could completely overturn a car with one punch. Rogue's turbo shoes, together with her physique, could completely jump to a height of 2 or 3 floors. With the support of these 3 special equipment, the current Dunya could be said to be a high-quality human monster, second only to Ryuto. Unless she was hit in the head by a sniper rifle or a bomb at close range, it was really difficult to kill her. And it was because of this that after Dunya jumped to the second-floor corridor, she turned her head and saw the group of black feather ninjas running towards the end of the corridor. In an instant, Dunya didn't say much, but instead, she lowered her body and used a very special way to swing her legs. Her whole body turned into a white light and chased after the group of black shadows. Dunya's speed was also very fast, even faster than the group of ninjas in front of her who were famous for their assassination. What was even more exaggerated was that when she rushed, she wasn't as light as the group of ninjas in front of her. Instead, every step she took seemed to make a big hole in the floor of the corridor. Boom! Boom! Boom boom boom! What's going on? Is there an elephant chasing from behind? Feeling the strong movement behind the corridor, Juanan couldn't help but turn his head to look, but he saw a petite white figure quickly approaching like a ghost. This girl is the young miss of the Saitu Guild? Saitu Dunia? As the leader of the Black Feather Ninjas, Juanan naturally had the detailed information of almost all the members of the Black Hand Alliance, with Ryuto as the core of the Black Hand Alliance. According to the information, Saitu Dunia was also a warrior. In the industry, people called her Silver Violent Bear. Although she was young, her fighting ability was extremely strong. TSK, now we are busy chasing Ayam, Sama, we don't have time to deal with her. From Juanan's point of view, he was already a certain distance away from Ryuto who was carrying Ayam. It was not easy to catch up with the two in front of him. If he was delayed by Dunia here, it would be even more impossible. So Juanan shouted to a young subordinate next to him, "Shinobu, go and kill the kid behind." Yes. After receiving the order from his leader, the top assassin of the Black Feather Ninjas, Shinobu quickly nodded and responded with a weak voice that was almost inaudible. Shinobu, from the appearance, he was a very thin young man. His body was as thin as a 13 or 14-year-old boy, his delicate face was as white as a sheet of paper, even in the daytime, he looked like a living ghost. But when he quickly stopped, turned around, and rushed toward Dunia at the back of the corridor, a trace of disdain flashed in his eyes. The young miss of the Saitu Guild. Saitu Dunia. A year ago, I didn't kill you at the Tokyo Emperor Hotel, and now you take the initiative to come to me. It seems that you are destined to die in my hands. That's right, a year ago, Tokyo Emperor Hotel. During the kidnapping of Dunia, Shinobu did have a chance to meet with Dunia, and he almost assassinated her father in front of her. But looking at the situation later, Saitu Takahiro didn't die, and Shinobu's assassination failed, which made this young genius of the Black Feather Ninjas very upset. Now is the right time. Let's use you as a sacrifice first. Whoosh. In the blink of an eye, Shinobu's body turned into a black light. When he rushed toward Dunia, his body stepped on the wall and flew up, and with the help of the ceiling, he flew in a beautiful triangular trajectory in the narrow corridor. Black Feather Inner Technique. Triangle Flying Shadow. Whoosh. A black light, a sharp black luster appeared from Shinobu's sleeve, and from a very strange angle, it stabbed toward Dunia's head. The Black Feather Ninjas were usually known for their powerful inner techniques, but Shinobu was obviously an anomaly in this group, and he walked the path of speed. By minimizing his weight, he gave up his strength in exchange for super high speed that was almost beyond human limits. This kind of Shinobu almost didn't have the ability to fight head-on, but with the custom-made black feather blade that could even cut through steel, his assassination ability was shocking. So at this moment, Shinobu seemed to have seen Dunia's death. Chapter 362. Of course, this was a matter of course. His body flickered like lightning, and his blade was as dark as a shadow. No one could defend against such a lightning strike from a strange angle. Or rather, Shinko thought no one could defend against it. However, when the hidden blade was less than half a meter away from Dunia, the true snake saw the eyes of the Saitu family's eldest daughter. The pair of clear and bright pupils were exuding a nostalgic look as if she didn't care about this attack at all. Nostalgic? Why is there nostalgia in her eyes? Is she reminiscing about her past before she dies? Although Shinko thought so, in fact, Dunia didn't miss her past, but she missed the night that changed her life more than a year ago. For Dunia, it was from that moment that her life began to move on the right track. The large-scale celebration of the 300th anniversary of Saitu Guild Hall, the shocking assassination in Tokyo Emperor Hotel, and the pursuit that lasted until the middle of the night after she was kidnapped. On that day, her father's chest was pierced by a sword, and he fell in a pool of blood. On that day, the pitch-black sword light pierced towards his chest. On that day, a young man stepped forward and saved the father and daughter. From that day onwards, Dunia's life was tied to Ryuto's, and at the same time, it was also tied to the word martial arts. It had been more than a year since that day that changed her life. The current Miss Saito was no longer the girl who could only tremble in fear when facing the blade that killed her father. The same action, the same person, but a different scene. It was the same ghost-like thin young assassin, the same pitch-black hidden blade, and the same death god's thorn that was falling towards Dunia. However, in Dunia's eyes, this seemingly terrifying attack was no threat at all. Yes, no threat at all. The black feather inner technique, triangle flying shadow, that the real snake was so proud of, and its super-fast speed was like a bat baring its fangs and brandishing its claws in front of Dunia. No matter how fast the bat was, no matter how scary it looked, it would never be able to defeat the bear. Moreover, Dunia was not an ordinary bear. She was a bear that had undergone strict martial arts training, been strengthened by the hell butterfly medicine, and was equipped with a bunch of pay-to-win equipment. She was a bear that had been completely sublimated from the inside out. She could be said to be a tyrant among bears. Thus, just as the real snake's blade was about to pierce through Dunia's head, her figure disappeared from her original position. What? In the next moment, the corners of the true snake's mouth that had been curling up slightly turned into a surprised curve. Dunia clearly did not move. She was clearly in the same spot. However, just as the sword was about to hit her forehead, the girl suddenly disappeared. It didn't make sense. At least, from the perspective of a real snake, it didn't make sense at all. However, this strange movement method that did not make sense was one of the three great mysteries of the ancient style called Furamaki-style martial arts. It was also the last and strongest mystery. Furamaki-style martial arts, profound meaning of the heart, receiving. It was different from profound meaning of skill, tiger fall, which interrupted the opponent's unfinished attack and caused a counterattack, as well as profound meaning of body, hard hit, which directly contracted one's muscles to take the attack and cause a counterattack. Profound meaning of the heart, receiving, was to see through the enemy's attack flow, and when the enemy's attack was completed, dodge and counterattack. The terrifying part of receiving was that the user had to dodge at the last moment of the attack, which was also commonly known as extreme dodge. The last moment of the attack was also the moment when the enemy's attention was the most relaxed, because he was certain that his attack had hit. At that moment, using a planned movement path to dodge out of the attack range as quickly as possible, it would give the impression that the target had disappeared right under his nose. However, although this sounded simple, it was not easy to do. First, one had to have the eyesight to see through the enemy's attack flow, as well as the courage to dodge at the last moment. Of course, the current Dunia must have done it perfectly, which was why the real snake looked like he had seen a ghost. After dodging the attack, Dunia had already arrived at the side of the real snake that had yet to land on the ground. With a seemingly simple movement, she pushed her palm upwards, hitting the hitman in the abdomen. PFFF. At the same time that it was pushed by the palm, the real snake felt as if all of its internal organs were rising up at that moment, all of them lining up to rush out of its mouth. His thin and weak body crashed into the 4 to 5 meter high ceiling with a loud bang. Half of his body was embedded in the ceiling. A single palm strike could send a person from mid-air to the 4 to 5 meter ceiling, and embedded in it without falling back down. What kind of terrifying strength was this? What is this? Before the real snake could react to what had happened, his consciousness had already rapidly ascended to the clouds. At this moment, the assassin's body was embedded in the ceiling of the manor's corridor, and his eyes were wide open, his mouth was slightly open, and the back of his head had softened into the shape of a tofu pudding. Naturally, he couldn't be more dead. Farewell, go to the other world and regret your actions. After glancing at the bastard assassin who had already been turned into a world-famous painting, Dunia quickly continued to chase the real snake. Although the previous series of exchanges seemed to have lasted for a long time, but in fact, from the time the real snake left the Black Wings Ninja unit and was turned into a famous painting by Dunia, at most, only 2 to 3 seconds had passed. Such a top-level assassin, a top-level ninja, who made Dunia tremble more than a year ago. But now, in front of Miss Saito, he could only block for 2 to 3 seconds. He was no different from trash. After quickly dealing with the real snake, Dunya continued to chase in the direction of the Mirage Temple. Don't even think about interfering with Ryuto, you bunch of trash. Watch me knock you into the wall one by one. As she chased after Yonkai, Dunya's body was filled with a surging murderous aura. Coupled with her rumbling steps, she looked extremely imposing. While Dunya and the ninjas continued the game of chase on the second floor, on the first floor, in the surrounding garden, and the pavilion, a bloody battle was still ongoing. He, ha 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 ha. Again. Outside the mansion, accompanied by the roar of the Amon clan leader Amon Ichi, his figure was particularly eye-catching as he rushed towards the enemy with his two long-handled axes. Bang, bang, bang. Several mercenary guards of the security department also shot at Ichi from various angles, but some of the bullets were dodged by him, and the other part was blocked by the high-speed rotating axes. The battle axe blocked the bullets. After blocking dozens of bullets, the battle axe chopped down on the back of a statue, causing the statue and the guards behind it to fall to the ground. At the same time, a ninja rushed out from a dark corner, trying to directly pierce the back of Ichi's head with his kunai. Tut tut tut. Tut 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 tut. But with the sound of submachine gun, the ninja didn't even touch Ichi, and he was shot into a sieve by Jiro, who came out from behind. With the continuous death of people, a thick smell of blood floated in the air in this area. The two forces fought more and more fiercely in this narrow space, and more corpses fell to the ground. Damn it! Are these guys the top powerhouses of the underground world, and what's the matter with those mercenaries? They are too elite. When the flames of war spread, as the head of the security department, Lin Hua was hiding behind a spring in the corner of the manor, tightly holding the pistol in his hand. The reason why the Heavenly Eye group was able to summon wind and rain everywhere was definitely one of the biggest reasons why the security department belonged to the group of elite mercenaries. The combat strength of this group was not something that ordinary mercenaries could contend with, but the group of Black Hand Alliance was able to fight on par with them. At this time, after the manor's defense facilities were paralyzed by Sensible's invasion, the two sides were fighting with real strength. It was a battle of life and death. Originally, Lin Hua thought that the elite troops under his command could quickly defeat the enemy, but he didn't expect the strength of the Dragon Fong squad to be quite good, and they also have the help of the 4 unreasonable big shots of the Amon clan. Damn it, I don't know how Sama is doing. Here it comes again. Just when Lin Hua was thinking whether was still alive in the big house not far away, a seemingly cute remote-controlled toy car had already circled around the spring. Boom! When Lin Hua hurriedly jumped to the side, the remote-controlled toy car also exploded, directly blowing the spring into pieces. Little girl, not bad, you didn't die from the explosion. In the smoke, Amon Zhang's figure slowly walked out, but he was immediately forced back into the corner by Lin Hua's gun. This Amon clan is basically a bunch of lunatics. Forget it, in any case, I still believe that Huanan can catch up and save Sama. Although Lin Hua was very concerned about the situation on the other side, she was currently facing the head of the Amon clan. She didn't have the chance to think about other things. From a certain point of view, the battle between Lin Hua and Amon Zhang could be considered a miniature version of the entire war. The battle between both sides was always in a stalemate. It was very difficult for one side to completely defeat the other. However, many of the main members of both sides were actually thinking about the two key figures who started this war, Ryuto Kiryu and Tenmu Ayam. What was the situation now? Chapter 363. In fact, when Ryuto quickly rushed to the second floor with Ayam in his arms, he was already running while tearing off the Velcro on Ayam's face and releasing the blood inside. Poochie! The moment the Velcro was torn off, a large amount of blood gushed out from Ayam's red lips, directly dyeing her and Ryuto's clothes red. This guy is really ruthless. I'm convinced. After quickly leaving Huanan behind, Ryuto rushed toward the stairs on the third floor with Ayam in his arms. At the same time, he reached into the woman's mouth and pulled out her bitten tongue. His hand went in, and it felt sticky. Blood and saliva were mixed together, plus Ayam had been trying to close her teeth, making Ryuto's dragging action very difficult. But not long after, Ryuto successfully pried open her teeth and pulled out the tongue that had been bitten off more than half and was stuck in her throat. It was very difficult to bite off one's own tongue if one didn't have great perseverance. Especially when her mouth was sealed, he didn't know how she could bite like this. After finally being able to breathe smoothly, Ayam first showed a strange smile and said, "The mud smells so good, I wish I could go to Shida's nest and take Shidu bu Lami," because her mouth was still full of blood, and half of her tongue was broken. Ayam's voice was very strange at this time. It was vague and could only be roughly heard. But even so, the provocative expression on her face vividly showed the attitude of the witch at this time. If she just wanted to thwart Ryuto's conspiracy, then Ayam had succeeded. Originally, Ryuto planned to take her out of the manor and then take the opportunity to kill her and then detonate the bomb to wipe out the elites of the Heavenly Eye Group. But now that the Heavenly Eye Group and the Black Hand Alliance were fighting, it was almost impossible for Ryuto to detonate the bomb, unless he wanted to kill Dunya and the others. Thump thump thump. Thump 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 thump. From the corridor behind, he could vaguely hear some hurried footsteps. Although it was very light, it was not difficult for Ryuto to find out that the group of black-winged ninjas was following behind. Hiss. What should he do now? In short, he should leave the manor first. Although the current situation was somewhat complicated, the core idea would not change. First, he had to leave this dangerous manor, and then think about how to stop the war and kill Ayam. Long Do kept thinking in his mind while his feet didn't stop moving. He ran towards the rooftop at a very fast speed. Now that the first floor hall and the surroundings had become a battlefield, it would be troublesome to directly rush out, so it was better to leave from the top floor. As long as he reached the top floor, Ryuto could take out his Wallace and fly away with Ayam, then turn around and clean up the situation here. Then everything would be very simple. Just as Ryuto was thinking, he had already quickly carried Ayam to the 5th floor rooftop of the manor's main villa. But at this time, Ryuto, who stepped on the rooftop, happened to see a huge black shadow in the sky not far away. What is that thing? Is it a plane? Ryuto had never seen such a huge flying machine in his life. Its length and width was at least 5 times that of a normal plane. Flying in the sea of clouds was as shocking as a huge aircraft carrier. At this time, the black shadow was obviously slowly descending. The huge black body was like a mountain peak cutting through the clouds, plunging down to the ground. The scene was very spectacular. When the black shadow left the shroud of the clouds, Ryuto discovered that it was actually a huge heavy-duty airship. At first glance, it looked like a huge oval-shaped balloon, but below the balloon was a huge and complex structure like an aircraft carrier. This kind of huge heavy-duty airship fortress was very rare in recent years. Its synonym was the Zeppelin airship that was developed by the German Republic. However, compared to the 6th Heavenly Devil that had been built with the advanced technologies of the Heavenly Eye Group, the Zeppelin was like a child's toy. That's right, this huge heavy-duty airship was called the 6th Heavenly Demon. Ryuto had seen this thing in the plot of Red Album 2, No Survivors. According to Ryuto's knowledge, this huge airship was the Heavenly Eye Group Mobile Fortress. Ayam had also ordered this airship to bomb many areas of Tokyo. But why did this thing appear here? Was it here to support Ayam? But wasn't it a little too exaggerated to drive this thing here? Suddenly, Ryuto couldn't help but look at Ayam in his arms, but he saw a trace of astonishment in her eyes. Indeed, it was indeed astonishment. Because even Ayam herself didn't know that the 6th Heavenly Demon would appear here today. After all, this thing belonged to the category of war-killing machine. When it really started, it would throw down row after row of bombs, carpet bombing a certain area. Such a war-killing machine was completely meaningless in this kind of small-scale battle. Unless it wanted to blow up its own people, it could only float in the sky as a mascot. But obviously, this 6th Heavenly Demon didn't fly all the way here just to be a mascot, and Ayam could clearly see that the bomb hatch below was slowly opening. The bomb hatch opening was the precursor of preparing to bomb. Ayam had seen this scene many times. The 6th Heavenly Demon was preparing to bomb here? Could it be that Nicholas, that guy? The moment she thought of this, Ayam slightly frowned. She seemed to have understood why this heavy-duty airship would appear here without her knowing. At the same time, Ryuto, Ayam, Lin Hua, and the others in the manor below were extremely surprised by the sudden appearance of the behemoth in the sky. The man in a long trench coat standing in the main cockpit of the airship, Nicholas, gave the order to prepare for bombing. "Do it. Raise the manor below to the ground." Although his big boss, Tenmu Iam, Lin Hua, Huan An, and other colleagues were still in the manor, Nikolai did not hesitate to issue this order. Upon closer inspection, it wasn't hard to notice that there was another short man standing beside him. It was a man who appeared on a TV program not long ago and announced the Extreme Dao, 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 Extreme Dao. The current Golden Heron and Prime Minister of Japan, Tanagawa Jinzo, or rather, the substitute of the man named Tanagawa Jinzo, had long rotted away in some stinky ditch. At this time, the short old man, who was nominally the Prime Minister of Japan, smiled at Nikolai and said, "Nikolai-sama is really clever. You can actually think of taking advantage of this opportunity to wipe out those guys in one fell swoop. It's really wonderful." According to what Tanagawa Jinzo knew, most of the high-end forces of the Tenmu Group and the Black Hand Alliance and the leaders of both sides were basically gathered in the manor. As long as the bomb fell and razed the manor to the ground, Nikolai-sama could rightfully take over everything in the Tenmu Group. After that, they only needed to eradicate the Black Hand Alliance that lacked the main force. At that time, they would be the king of this country. It's not that I did too well, but that woman has fallen. During this time, her attention was all on Ryuto Kiryu, and there was no way for her to control the overall situation. Instead, it benefited me. Looking at the situation in the manor below through the observation screen, Nikolai couldn't help but reveal a cruel smile. Nikolai was a man born with a rebellious nature. What he was best at was betrayal, and King betrayal. Speaking of which, Nikolai actually didn't have the intention to betray his boss at the beginning. Who knew that his boss actually wanted to go on a date with the leader of the enemy, which made him think of something. Tenmu Iam. A woman immersed in love can't have the power to change the world. Let me complete this great undertaking for you. With this in mind, Nikolai secretly planned the bombing operation. Because he was the head of the Ministry of War, and because he was also an old fox, it wasn't difficult to hide from Iam, who was in love and had her attention on Ryuto. It just depended on whether he had the courage to do it. So at this moment, the huge sixth sky demon appeared out of nowhere and covered the entire sky of the manor. "Let go of me." At this time, Iam, who was still in Ryuto's embrace, quickly said, "Nikolai wants to indiscriminately bomb this place. Let go of me, or everyone here will die." What? Nikolai's guy rebelled? But it seemed to be quite normal. Ryuto also knew that Nikolai was born with a rebellious nature, but he didn't expect him to seize such a good opportunity to get rid of him and Iam in one fell swoop. The sixth sky demoness carpet bombing was terrifying. Ryuto had seen it in the game. Moreover, there was a heartbeat bomb buried under the manor. If it really exploded, no one in the manor would be able to escape. Gotcha! Gotcha! At this critical moment, Ryuto quickly reached out and twisted Iam's shoulder joints, allowing her to regain the ability to move her hands. After she could move her arms, Iam didn't hesitate and immediately pressed the communication button on her collar. She used a muffled voice to order Ling Hua, who was in the manor, "Cease fire immediately. Everyone evacuate as fast as possible. I repeat, cease fire immediately. Everyone evacuate as fast as possible." At the same time, Ryuto also opened his communication device and said to Colored Glaze in the command center, "Immediately tell Dunya and the others to stop fighting and leave as fast as possible, or else, rumble, rumble, rumble." When Iam and Ryuto gave their orders, the huge airship in the sky had already dropped the first wave of unguided bombs. Chapter 364. Carpet bombing refers to the use of a large number of unguided bombs to bombard an area, killing and destroying the people and facilities in that area. At this time, a large number of unguided bombs fell from the sky, almost covering the entire area of the manor in the bombing zone. Retreat. Everyone retreat. Retreat immediately. Everyone retreat. Stop fighting. Evacuate as fast as possible. The bombs fell at almost the same time as Iam and Colored Glaze's orders to retreat. At first, the people on both sides didn't understand why they had to retreat, but when they saw the bombs fall, they understood. Run. 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 If they don't run now, they'll be finished. For a moment, the entire manor was in chaos. Whether it was the mercenaries of the Heavenly Eye Group, the Black Wing Ninjas, or the members of the Black Hand Alliance, Dunya, and the Amon clan, they all rushed out as fast as they could. Countless old enemies who were fighting each other just now also stopped fighting. They threw away their heavy firearms, ammunition, and other equipment, trying to get out of the bombing area as fast as possible. However, no matter how one looked at it, it was impossible to do so. The bombing area covered the entire manor, and even the surrounding area was at least a few hundred meters. Now that the bombs fell, it would hit the ground in less than 10 seconds. It was easier said than done to get out of the bombing area in a few seconds. Oh no! The manor's air defense system was hacked by your people, and now it can't fire automatically. Are we going to die here together? Looking at the rain of death falling from the sky, Iam couldn't help but sigh. Originally, there was a complete air defense system in the manor, but the air defense system needed electricity to operate, otherwise it would be useless. Earlier, when Ryu Do and the others were fighting in the hall, Lu Li had already made a wise arrangement. She hacked into the room and physically cut off the electric current with the help of a few guardian ninjas. Now the manor's computers couldn't be turned on, and most of the wires were cut. No matter how strong the air defense system was, it was useless. Without any defense system, this carpet bombing would definitely trigger the heartbeat bomb under the manor. At that time, Iam and Ryuto wouldn't be able to escape from the explosion. But even at this time, Ryuto still shook his head and laughed. I don't want to die with you, that's too embarrassing. TCH, if you don't want to die, then think of a way, the bombs are about to fall. Oh. Before Iam finished speaking, her body that was in Ryuto's arms was thrown to the ground. Long Do had only just corrected Yongji's shoulder joint. Her knee was still in a twisted state, so she could only sit on the ground after being thrown down. You. Iam wanted to complain if he could be gentler, but when she looked up, she saw a magical scene. Because at this moment, in front of Iam, Ryuto actually took out a huge rocket launcher from his crotch. It was a huge rocket launcher. The cylindrical body was about 1.5 meters long, and the muzzle diameter was at least 10 centimeters. Carrying it on his shoulder was like carrying a small chimney. How did he hide such a large caliber rocket launcher on his body? Iam had been in close contact with Ryuto many times just now. She was sure that Ryuto couldn't hide such a big thing on his body. Wait. Could it be? It can't be. Suddenly, Iam couldn't help but look at Ryuto's steep buttocks, and then made a bold assumption. But at this time, Ryuto obviously didn't care what Iam thought. Compared to how he did the magic of hiding a rocket launcher in his crotch, it was more important to shoot down the bombs in the sky. Carpet bombing, is it? If even one of your bombs can land on the ground, then it's my loss. Carrying his beloved Rogue advanced rocket launcher, and aiming the muzzle in the direction of the sea of bombs, Ryuto didn't hesitate to pull the trigger. Whoosh! Accompanied by a burst of explosive sounds, the huge 120mm rocket flew into the air with a trail of black flame and sparks and lightning. The first wave of unguided bombs under the bomb port of the 6th Sky Devil was at least 50 to 60. If it landed on the ground, it would be enough to turn half of the manor into a sea of fire. But at this time, the huge rocket soared into the sky and directly hit the center of the unguided bomb formation from above. Whoosh! Boom boom! A loud noise came from the clear sky, causing panic among the fleeing crowd below. Did the bombs fall? Strictly speaking, they didn't, because they were detonated by Ryuto's rocket when they were at least 200 meters away from the ground. However, when these bombs exploded in midair, the sound they caused was extremely shocking. Continuous loud noises came one after another, and a blazing wave erupted in the air above the manor. The billowing smoke was like a sandstorm that covered the sky, and together with the strong wind pressure, it rolled down on the people below. In an instant, most of the people inside the manor who didn't have time to run out were instantly thrown to the ground by the blazing wave. Not only that, the green lawns, plants, and gardens of the manor quickly began to burn. Visible cracks appeared on the buildings, and the ground was filled with dust and rocks. The bomb fragments that weren't completely destroyed fell to the ground like raindrops. Flames, heat waves, strong winds, and debris mercilessly smashed into the fleeing crowd. Dark red blood splattered everywhere. Every second, there were people dying for various reasons. Ugh. This is... Damn it! In the midst of the fleeing crowd, Dunia's body stood firm at the edge of the manor, as if the terrifying explosion didn't pose any threat to her. She also casually dodged the few bomb fragments that were shot at her. In the chaos, the manor was on the verge of collapse, and flames soared into the sky. This was the situation where the bombs didn't directly fall to the ground and were detonated. If so many bombs directly fell to the ground, then most of the people in the manor would have been turned into ashes, and even Dunia might not be able to escape. But now, although Dunia had almost escaped, her eyes were fixed on the roof of the villa in the middle of the manor. Because Dunia knew that Ryuto shouldn't have escaped yet. He should be there, and the rocket that just detonated was fired by him. Dragon Duel. You must come out unscathed. Dunia couldn't help but think to herself as she looked at the thick sea of smoke and flames in the villa. Indeed, the manor's surroundings had been turned into a mess by the mid-air detonation, and the villa in the middle of the manor was even more heaty, as if it could cook people on the spot. But Ryuto and Ayam weren't ordinary people, so the two of them didn't even bat an eyelid in such a terrible situation. The flames burned their hair, and the thick smoke blackened their faces. The surrounding walls were starting to crack, but the two standing on the roof were still as calm as ever. Looking at the sixth sky demon that opened its bomb bay, I am reminded. That airship can only carry 200 bombs at most, only enough for 4 waves. The second wave is coming. Before he could finish his sentence, another rain of death quickly fell from the sky, mixed with the billowing smoke from the previous explosion, and flew toward the manor together with the violent winds and huge waves. Ryuto didn't hesitate to pull the trigger, and released 3 rockets in a row, causing the second wave of carpet bombing to be prematurely detonated. Boom! There was another wave of violent explosions, and the second wave of strong winds swept over, almost washing the entire manor once again. Almost all the trees were set ablaze, and the manor was ablaze. It was the color of hell. But fortunately, there weren't too many casualties this time. After all, most of the Heavenly Eye group and Black Hand Alliance members had run to the periphery of the manor, to a safer distance. Seeing that the second wave of bombing didn't succeed in razing the manor to the ground, Nicholas in the Sixth Sky Demon frowned and shouted, "Throw all the remaining bombs down at once. We must blow them up." As the chief supervisor of the Sixth Sky Demon, Nicholas naturally knew how many bombs this airship could carry. And when the first 2 waves of bombing didn't have any substantial effect, this traitor couldn't bear it anymore, and decided to go all out. He had to blow up Ayam and Ryuto. If he couldn't blow them up here, Nicholas knew what would happen to him. So under his command, the Sixth Sky Demon dropped all the bombs in the bomb bay. They were all aimed at the villa where Ryuto and Ayam were. Humph. It doesn't matter how many waves come, I'll lure them all. Seeing the third and largest wave of bombs falling from the sky, Ryuto raised his rogue black tech rocket launcher, as usual, and prepared to fire more rockets to blow up the bombs prematurely. But at this moment, a black shadow appeared behind him like a bolt of lightning. At the same time the black shadow appeared, his right hand swung like a whip, and his index, middle, and nameless fingers stabbed towards Ryuto like the tip of a whip. His fingertips sliced through the air, and the air along the way seemed to be neatly cut in half. This was the Ninja Protector Side's secret technique, Sacrificial Blade. Go to hell, Ryuto Kiryu. When he stabbed his killer move towards the back of Ryuto's neck, the so-called strongest ninja couldn't help but reveal a delighted smile. Chapter 365. For the little bastard Juan and to jump out at this time, not only Ryuto, but even Ayam didn't expect it. How should one describe Juan, and's current actions. There is a phrase that the ancestor used very well, it is called, shit stirrer. The current situation is already deadly enough, there is a rain of bombs above their heads, the whole villa is shaking, and there is a sea of smoke and fire everywhere, maybe in the next moment, everyone will line up to die together. And the rogue black tech rocket launcher, in Ryuto's hand, can be said to be everyone's last savior. As long as the rocket launcher fires a few times, it will detonate the last wave of bombs falling from above, at least it won't be difficult to save their lives. But in this case, Hwan An still jumped out to stab Ryuto in the back. It's really hard to describe his actions other than shit stirrer. At the moment of shooting, Hwan An's eyes were filled with blood-red killing intent, because he can't care about anything else now. Not long ago, in the process of rushing to the roof, Hwan An saw that Dunya was about to catch up with him, so he used a substitution jutsu, which is to let his men pretend to be him and escape to the garden outside. This is also one of the reasons why Dunya was outside the garden and was able to escape in the first place. But after doing this, Hwan An's self-esteem and power suffered a huge blow. In order to escape the pursuit of a little girl, he pushed all his capable men to their deaths. This kind of thing can be regarded as a disgrace even in the most despicable ninja world. But Hwan An is too lazy to care about this now, because he only wants one thing, and that is Ryuto's life. Kill him, kill him, kill him, no matter what, he must kill him. Hwan An had a crazed expression on her face when she unleashed her inner skill, Sacrificial Blade, at Ryudo. Obviously, this mad dog is too lazy to care about the bombs flying everywhere in the sky, and he doesn't even care about how long he can live. All he wants now is Ryuto's life, other things are not important at all. But even in this crazy situation, Hwan An's attack is also very careful. The position of his blade sacrifice is very clever, it just hit the medulla oblongata located at the back of the head. This is a major vital part of the human body, and there is no muscle protection in this part, it is extremely fragile. Even with Ryuto's physical fitness, it is impossible to use this fragile vital part to resist the attack. If it hit him, he will definitely die. The most important thing was that Long Do's attention was on the rocket launcher in his hand. He was watching the bombs falling from the sky and had no time or energy to deal with the illusion temple. It's over. Do I have to start over again? After perceiving Hwan's attack, Ryuto can't help but shake his head. He can't avoid this attack now. If he dodges, the rocket launcher in his hand will definitely not hit the target, and the bombs falling from the sky will still blow the ground to ashes. But if he doesn't dodge, the medulla oblongata alone can't resist this attack, and he will still die. Thinking of this, Ryuto gave up futile resistance, stood in place, and pulled the trigger in his hand. Even if he dies, he must finish this shot. Anyway, for him, the worst case is to start over again. If he dies, then he dies, it's not like he hasn't died before. Zap. Thus, just as the rocket launcher fired an ear-piercing explosion and the rocket flew up into the sky with black flames, the sound of a sharp weapon cutting came from behind Long Do. But strangely, Ryuto didn't feel anything at all. There is no pain of being stabbed in the medulla oblongata. Huh? What's going on? In the next moment, Long Do turned around and saw a scene that he couldn't believe. It's Ayam, the woman who was sitting next to Ryuto, the woman who can't move her legs freely. When Hwan An's blade was about to pierce the back of Ryuto's head, Ayam didn't hesitate to jump forward with her hands on the ground. She took out a small blade from her sleeve and slashed at Hwan An's leg. This slash didn't seem to be very powerful, but that unremarkable blade was incomparably sharp. It actually directly cut off Hwan An's left leg at the knee. The cut is as smooth as a mirror. Plop. Then Hwan An lost his balance and fell to the ground, and the blade in his hand was missing. The moment he fell to the ground, the huge wound on Hwan An's leg spurted out a lot of blood like a fountain, and he looked at his boss in disbelief, as if he didn't understand why his boss suddenly changed sides. So, this Chenmu Group, Intelligence Department, head asked with fear, Young. Ayam, Sama, you. Hwan An didn't expect that he would be stabbed in the back by Ayam, Sama one day. Of course, Ayam also didn't expect that she would have such a stupid subordinate. At this time, he was still thinking about killing, as if he didn't care about the bomb rain in the sky. It doesn't matter if you want to die, but don't drag me to die with you, okay? If it wasn't for the unprecedented explosion in the sky, and the strongest wave of heat coming down together with a strong wind, Yongji really wanted to rain curses on the fantasy nunnery. But it was useless, or rather, there was no point in doing so. Under the last wave of Nicholas's desperate all-out bombardment, although the bombs were detonated in mid-air, due to the sheer number of bombs, it still looked like a rain of fire was raining down from the sky. The heat wave rushed over, and large pieces of bomb fragments fell like meteorites, and the strong impact could almost blow an adult more than 10 meters away. Under such a terrifying explosion, the already ravaged villa finally couldn't hold on any longer. Instead, it began to collapse after a few seconds. Rumble. Suddenly, the top floor where Ryuto was standing shattered, and the balance under his feet was suddenly broken, making him somewhat unable to stabilize his body. If he stayed here any longer, he would only be crushed into minced meat by the collapsing villa and the shrapnel that filled the sky in a few seconds. Therefore, Long Do instinctively wanted to jump outside. It was said that this was the top floor of the 5th floor of the villa, but this height couldn't do anything to Ryuto now. As long as he jumped out, at least it wouldn't be a problem to save his life. However, just as Long Do was about to leave, he caught sight of the woman who was slumped on the ground not far away from him. Ryuto could run, but Ayam couldn't. In this chaotic situation, if she was left alone, the result would be that she would be buried like Juan, and who had fallen into the crack, crushed into a pile of unrecognizable minced meat by hundreds of tons of building debris. Logically speaking, this situation should be what Ryuto wanted to see. After all, the purpose of his trip was to kill Ayam. But at the moment when he saw that she was about to fall into the abyss, Ryuto couldn't help but run over there and reach out to the woman. Why did he do this? Ryuto actually didn't know. Maybe he just didn't want to see Ayam die under the betrayal of a traitor, or he was afraid that after Ayam died, the heartbeat bomb underground would take him away, or there were some other reasons. But the moment he reached out his hand, Ayam looked up at Ryuto, but her eyes still carried the natural arrogance and toughness. Time paused for a second. In this second, Yongji didn't reach out to grab this hand, instead falling backwards, falling into the already collapsed building. This. You would rather die than take me with you? The moment he saw this scene, Ryuto only felt a chill all over his body, and quickly jumped out. He opened the rogue glider, and flew toward the manor with the help of the violent storm. As long as Ayam died, the heartbeat bomb would detonate, and at that time, Ryuto wouldn't be able to survive. Therefore, he could only pray that Yongji was not crushed to death by some random thing after falling down. Otherwise, all his previous efforts would have been in vain. In the violent storm, Ryuto and his glider were like a big bird flying in the sky, but until he flew out of the manor and met with Dunya and the others, the explosion still didn't happen. Ryuto. Great, you're still alive. When Long Do landed on the ground, Dunya, who had been waiting outside the manor, hurriedly ran over and clung to him like a big tree bear. Except for Dunya, most of the members of the Dragon Fong squad, including the Amon clan and most of the Dragon Fong squad members escaped. Although some of them died in the previous battle, the casualties were not too heavy. As for the other group of mercenaries led by Lin Hua, they had not fled in this direction from the beginning. Now, no one knew where they had run off to. At least, Long Do did not see them. But when he turned his head and looked at the manor that was already covered in raging flames, and the main building in the middle of the manor was slowly collapsing, he couldn't help but think of a puzzling question. The question was, is Ayam really dead? From the situation at that time, Ayam should have died without a doubt. After all, her whole body fell into the collapsed building, and the sky was filled with flames and bomb fragments. Let alone burning her, she should have been crushed into meat paste. But if Ayam was dead, why didn't the heartbeat bomb detonate? Logically speaking, the big bomb that killed Ryuto several times should have detonated when Ayam's heart stopped beating, and directly destroyed everything around her. That was the normal situation. Was there a problem with the bomb? Why didn't it detonate? Or, the woman who rejected Ryuto's help at the last moment wasn't dead? As a cool breeze blew by, the flames in the manor burned even more fiercely, and the huge sixth sky devil in the sky slowly sailed away. Although the fire in the manor burned fiercely, the battle inside and outside gradually subsided, and everything seemed to have returned to normal. Chapter 366. After that day, a lot of things had changed. After losing Ayam, the Tenmu group became Nicholas. He and the fake golden heron Shinzo Tanagawa occupied the unfettered Sky Tower in an attempt to rebuild their own hegemony. However, Ryuto, who was tricked by the bastard Nicola, naturally wouldn't let them go. On the third night, the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Tanagawa died of a heart attack in his own residence. The fake Prime Minister thus came to an end. The ones in charge of taking over his job were two other golden herons, or golden herons, who had been arranged by Rui Konoshiro and Kyoji Tsukimi. They were also loyal to the Yatsuki and the Black Hand Alliance. After the new Prime Minister came to power, he immediately overturned the previous Extreme Drive-Out Act and slowly calmed down the storm involving extreme power. After that, Colored Glaze used the same method as Ayam and stuffed a large number of his own people into the Diet, Parliament, and other places. He controlled all these official institutions in his own hands. As for the members of the old era who disobeyed and didn't support him, most of them were massacred. Almost all of them were packed up and thrown into Tokyo Bay by the Black Hand Alliance. For a time, the whole of Tokyo was swept by a bloody storm invisible to ordinary people. A large number of officials, nobles, and upper-class people were dealt with by Yatsuki and the Black Hand Alliance. Countless people were killed, and those who survived almost all wagged their tails and begged for mercy to the new rulers, begging for their lives. Fortunately, Ryuto didn't need to worry about these things. Naturally, Rui and the others would take care of it properly. On the morning of the seventh day, the area of the manor that had been bombed by the earth-shattering battle had been cleaned up by more than half. From the remains of the collapsed and scorched building, people found a corpse. It was a corpse that was missing a right arm. Before death, the face seemed to be filled with fear and unwillingness. There was no doubt that this corpse came from the head of the Tenmu Group's secret department. Juan and Ryuto saw with his own eyes that he was involved in the collapsed building. It was reasonable for him to die here. But what was very strange was that there was no corpse of the other person found at the scene. Ryuto stood aside and watched with a complicated expression on his face as the workers from Yamakata Crow dug out the giant, heartbeat bomb, buried in the ground and carefully carried it away. The huge bomb was almost the size of an entire house. It was no wonder that the explosion range could affect the entire manor. After the professional bomb disposal personnel removed the detonation system, the big guy that was deliberately shaped like a heart was slowly carried away amidst the exclamations of the group of people. According to the investigation of the bomb disposal personnel, the detonation system of the bomb had been operating normally before, and it also had a built-in power source, so it would not fail to detonate due to a power failure. Are you still doubtful? As Ryuto watched the huge bomb being carried away, a feminine voice came from behind him. Yes. Ryuto turned to look at Rue Hui and said with a smile, "It's hard not to be puzzled by this scene. No one can tell whether she's dead or alive. Now it seems that she's dead. Otherwise, she wouldn't have let Nicholas die so easily." Rue Hui also turned to look at the hollowed-out villa area not far away, then shook her head slightly. According to the latest intelligence, the former head of the weapons department, who betrayed the Tenmu group, died 5 hours ago on the snowy Siberian tundra. The people who killed Nicholas were his two former colleagues, the head of the Gods Department, Lin Hua, and the head of the Pharmacology Department, Yomi. They hung Nicholas's body, which was riddled with holes, on the top of Mount Elbrus, the highest mountain in the Northland, as a consolation for the big boss of the Heavenly Eye group who had been killed by the traitor. From this point of view, Lin Hua and the others should have thought that Ayam was dead. And if Ayam was still alive, she definitely wouldn't have simply shot Nicholas to death. But even so, there were some things that couldn't be explained this way. Because the body of the supposedly dead person wasn't found under the burned villa. There was a body in the Mirage Nunnery that fell at about the same time, but Ayam's body wasn't. And from the deep excavation of the wreckage of the villa, there wasn't any secret passage under the villa that could escape. The most important thing was that the heartbeat bomb didn't activate. The bomb setting was that as soon as Ayam's heartbeat stopped, the chip in her heart would immediately send out a signal to detonate it. Until it was dug out, all the functions of the heartbeat bomb were still normal. In other words, the moment Ayam died, this thing should have already exploded. But it didn't. This thing didn't detonate at all, which meant that Ayam's heart didn't stop beating. No one knew if she was alive or dead. Other than being mysterious or strange, it was really difficult to use normal logic to describe the situation. At this time, Rue Hui smiled bitterly and said, "Actually, let's think about it more simply. Maybe her body was burned into charcoal and mixed with the wreckage of the building, so we couldn't find it." "That's true, but the body in the Mirage Nunnery is still intact. Even if Ayam was burned, there shouldn't be no trace left. Then we can only suspect that she turned into a butterfly in the fire and flew to another world." Looking at the dark scorched land not far away, Rue Hui seemed to recall the scene of her playing with Ayam by the lake. That mature little girl, that witch who killed without batting an eyelid, that descendant of the Qianmu clan that had been entangled with the Komiyoshi clan for hundreds of years, did she really disappear just like that? If Ayam was really dead, although Rue Hui felt a little sad, she should be happy on the whole. After all, this was a huge problem. But the current situation made her feel the same as Ryuto. She felt very complicated, and she couldn't figure out if that person was truly dead or not. However, it was meaningless for the two of them to think about it now. After all, whether Ayam was dead or alive wasn't up to them to decide. Before Ayam appeared, they had to live normally. So when Ryuto and Rue Hui left the manor, the latter joked, "Things here are almost over. It's time for you to accompany Colored Glaze and the others to live a normal life." For such a long time, Ryuto had spent most of his time on the Qianmu group. Now that the Qianmu group had fallen apart, he could finally put down some of the tasks on his shoulders. Although there were still 2 ministers led by the Defense Department and the Pharmacy Department leading the remaining troops. However, the power of that group was no longer what it used to be, and without Yongji's presence, they couldn't stir up any big waves. Most importantly, the Yatsuki was completely under the control of Rue Hui and Kyoji. In addition, after supporting the third Jean Lu to become the prime minister, she was almost at the point where she could do whatever she wanted in the country. On the surface, the government forces, the secret Black Hand Alliance, plus the division of the Qianmu group and the disappearance of the leader. Now, Ryuto could indeed take a good rest. He didn't need to risk his life for the time being. Live a normal life. By the way, I've forgotten what it feels like. After hearing Rue Hui's words, Ryuto leaned back and slumped in the back seat of the car with a helpless expression on his face. Ever since Long Do had transmigrated to this world, he had been plotting every single day. Every single day, he had been fighting for his life. Every single day, he had been fighting to survive. This suddenly told him that the danger had basically been eliminated, and he could live a good life. He really wasn't used to it. Immediately, Rue Hui covered her mouth and laughed. "I see. Why don't you marry Colored Glaze first, and then quickly give birth to a big fat boy for me to take care of?" Marry. Although Rue Hui said it in a joking tone, Ryuto could hear that she was serious. After all, Yunyan was pregnant, and soon her stomach would swell. It wouldn't be good for her to be an unmarried mother, so it was better to get married first. And the most important thing was that since Yunyan was pregnant, Rue Hui naturally didn't want her daughter, Colored Glaze, to fall behind. She definitely hoped that Colored Glaze could also have a happy ending with her son-in-law as soon as possible. So the first thing to do was to get married. As long as they got married, they could live together legitimately. It was not a problem to have 2 children in 3 years. Besides, Rue Hui liked children, so she naturally hoped to have grandchildren as soon as possible. But thinking about it carefully, Ryuto was only 17 years old now, and the youngest, Dunya, was only 16 years old. If they got married so early, could they really get a marriage certificate? No, the most important thing was that Ryuto had 3 wives. How could they do it? After raising his doubts to Rue Hui smiled and said, "Don't tell me you are only thinking about this now?" I was thinking about getting a citizenship from the Middle East, although it seemed troublesome after checking it. You don't have to make it so troublesome. I have revised the marriage law here. After a week, you can legally marry 3 wives in Japan, and the legal marriage age for men has been pushed to 17 years old, which happens to meet your conditions. WH. What? Do you have to play so big? The moment he heard this sentence, Ryuto couldn't help but cover his face. He seemed to be a little speechless at Rue Hui's abuse of power for personal gain. In order to let her daughter and son-in-law get married here smoothly, she even directly revised the marriage law. From a certain point of view, Rue Hui was not inferior to Ryuto in terms of lawlessness. But since his mother-in-law was ready to let her daughter get married, Ryuto couldn't say no as a man. But before getting married, he had one more thing to do. That was to go to the 3 families to propose to the 3 young ladies. This was not an easy job. Chapter 367. Marriage proposal, for some people, may be just a matter between the man and the woman. But in these big families in Tokyo, marriage proposal was not just a matter between the man and the woman. In addition to the woman herself agreeing, they also needed to get the permission of their family, which was the marriage proposal. Of course, although Ryuto felt a little tired of this cumbersome process, he had nothing to say about it. After all, this was the tradition. When proposing marriage, they still had to respect the woman's family. So in an afternoon a few days later, Ryuto dressed up in his most normal suit in the Rulon Group headquarters. It was rare for him to be a serious young man. Voila! At this moment, the door of the room opened, and a man with a square face walked in with stiff steps. Because today, he accompanied his son to propose marriage, the former Rulon Group leader, Tongshan Kazuma, also wore a set of very serious clothes. In addition to the very serious clothes, he also let people comb his hair neatly, meticulously, and even put on a hair wax. He also deliberately wore a pair of infinity glasses to cover his fierce eyes. How to say, after this treatment, the original extreme tough man, Tongshan Kazuma, had become a relatively normal middle-aged father, although he was obviously not very comfortable with this outfit. After entering the room, he said to his son, "Are you ready? The car is already waiting at the door." "No problem, we can leave at any time." Ryuto, who also wore infinity glasses, reached out and moved the thing on the bridge of his nose, and showed a "you are also like this" smile to his father. After all, the fierce eyes were not just Kazuma's problem. Ryuto's eyes were enough to scare children, so in order not to bring trouble to the in-laws, he still had to wear a pair of glasses to cover it. In this way, the father and son brought some very precious gifts and drove together to the Tsukuminari villa. Sitting in the driver's seat, Narukai played war music, while Kazuma and Ryuto in the back seat were speechless. Speaking of which, Ryuto hadn't seen his 3 future wives for a while. After the previous commotion, Colored Glaze, Yunyen, and Dunya all returned to their respective homes. After all, the 3 of them were still virgins in name. It was somewhat unreasonable for them to always stay in the man's house. In particular, Yunyen was now pregnant, and the headquarters of the Rulon Group was full of smelly men. Naturally, her parents, Gong Si and Jinchin, hoped that their daughter would go home and take care of the baby. According to the convention in Tokyo, before the marriage proposal was completed, the male and female protagonists could not meet. Therefore, during the few days he was preparing for the marriage proposal, Ryuto could only text and call the 3 women every day, trying out the bitterness of being in a long-distance relationship. At this time, Ryuto, who was sitting in the back seat, smiled and said, "Dad, are you nervous?" Kazuma snorted and said, "A man, it's just a marriage proposal. What's there to be nervous about? But I heard that there are a lot of people in the 3 families. If they stand in a row, they might fill up the entire field. How are you going to deal with it?" The moment he heard this sentence, Kazuma's expression suddenly became a bit stiff. But he still firmly replied, "Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. No matter what, don't forget your manners." Speaking of which, Kazuma actually didn't experience this kind of situation. After all, when he married Ryuto's mother, Yumi, he didn't go through the normal process. And Kazuma didn't have a father, and Yumi didn't have a good relationship with her family, which saved a lot of trouble. And just as the father and son were sitting in the car and imagining the scene, in the master room of the Tsukujiri villa, Tsukujiri Kyoji was bent over the desk as if he was writing something. Unlike usual, the male master of the Tsukujiri family now had an excited and sinister expression on his face. This was completely different from the usual gentle and elegant Tsukujiri Group CEO. He, ha 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 ha. After writing something unknown, Kyoji couldn't help but pick up the paper and laugh. It's over. Done. Let's see what that brat is going to do next. Just as Gong Si was laughing like a maniac, Zhenqin frowned and said, Dear, isn't it inappropriate for us to do this? Not good. What's not good about it? That. Ryuto, Kun definitely can't answer the questions on this paper, right? Isn't this difficult? At this moment, Shinkoto looked at the paper in Kyoji's hand. There were 10 questions written on it, and they covered philosophy, cognitive science, mathematics, neurophysiology, psychology, computer science, information theory, cybernetics, indeterminacy, and so on. According to Kyoji, during the marriage proposal process, he would use the questions on this paper as a test for Ryuto. Ryuto had to answer all the questions to be able to see Yunyen and propose marriage. What if he can't answer them? Then I'm sorry, you should go back and study, read a few more books, and wait until you have the talent to match the daughter of the Tsukujiri Corporation's CEO before proposing marriage. Logically speaking, it was normal for the father-in-law to test the son-in-law during the marriage proposal process. But the problem was that Kyoji's test was the kind that he didn't want anyone to pass. Everyone knew that Long Do was just a high school student. Moreover, he was a second-year high school student who dropped out of school halfway. Moreover, he didn't study much and couldn't even recognize all 29 English letters. How could such a young man answer so many profound questions that involved so many subjects? Wasn't this purposely making things difficult? I'm purposely making things difficult for him. After hearing his wife say this, Kyoji couldn't help but snort and curse. Who told that brat to get Yunyen pregnant? Yunyen is only 18 years old. She's already a mother. This is ridiculous. When he said this, Kyoji's face became worse and worse. He even felt like he was about to explode in anger. But this was to be expected. After all, any father who knew that his daughter had a child before marriage wouldn't be happy, not to mention that the one who did it was an extremely stinky hoodlum. It was like his own vegetables being eaten by a pig. So when Gong Si heard that Ryu Do was coming to propose, he was definitely unhappy. The feeling wasn't inferior to being ridden on by someone who wanted to take a dump, and also being asked for toilet paper. Not only that, because Gong Si knew that Long Do's temper wasn't very good, he was afraid that Long Do would directly kidnap him if he didn't pass the test. Gong Si also called all the aunties of the Tsuchikami family over to prevent Long Do from getting angry. In a while, in the spacious main hall, there would be hundreds of people watching his father-in-law test the woman. He didn't believe that Ryuto would have the nerve to get angry in front of everyone. Humph, Ryuto Kiryu, I don't believe that you won't fall this time. I must let you know that it's not so easy to be the son-in-law of the Tsukujiri Corporation. Standing on the roof and looking at the car that belonged to the Rulon Group, slowly approaching, Kyoji raised the corner of his mouth and revealed a very confident smile. However, just as the second father-in-law was about to give his son-in-law a huge surprise, Kazuma and Ryuto finally arrived at the Tsukujiri villa. After arranging for Narukai to carry the bags, the father and son walked side by side to the main hall under the guidance of the housekeeper. Ryuto was very familiar with this Tsukujiri villa. After all, he didn't know how many times he had been here. But even so, it was the first time he saw so many people sitting in the main hall. Oh, is this our family's new son-in-law? He's so handsome. Isn't that so? That's the famous Tong Shang dragon-fighting monarch. That's amazing. But I heard that he seems to have some relationship with the eldest daughter of the Kamiyoshi and Saito family. Is that okay? It doesn't matter, it's normal to have 3 wives and 4 concubines in our circle, as long as Yunyen doesn't become a concubine. Jabber, 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 jabber. When Ryuto and Kazuma arrived at the main hall, what greeted them was a huge storm of public opinion and hundreds of gazes. Well, how should I put it? Strictly speaking, the members of the Tsukujiri family who were gathered here didn't have any ill intentions towards Ryudo. After all, he was their son-in-law. However, the way they were judging him was quite annoying. This feeling was like going back to your hometown for Chinese New Year, and the uncles and aunties at home surrounded you at the dinner table. Those who understood this feeling would naturally understand. Damn, there really was a scene of uncles and aunties all over the playground. Suddenly, Ryuto couldn't help but look at his old man, and a trace of helplessness flashed in his eyes. But after all, this was the Tsukujiri family, and the two of them were here to propose marriage, so they could only walk forward with a stiff smile on their faces. From time to time, they had to deal with the distant relatives who came up to greet them enthusiastically. Ryuto walked along the short path of tens of meters with great difficulty. He felt like a monkey in a zoo, being warmly looked at by tourists from all directions. But fortunately, the two masters of the Tsukujiri family, Tsukujiri Kyoji and Tsukujiri Jinchin, were waiting in the middle of the main hall. When Jinchin saw her son-in-law coming, she immediately went over and warmly invited the father and son to sit in the middle. Her young face had an expression that said, the more a mother-in-law looks at her son-in-law, the more she likes him. As for Kyoji, on the surface, he had a smiling face, but Ryuto felt that his smile contained 3 parts sarcasm, 3 parts excitement, 3 parts sinister, and 91 parts malicious intent. What kind of trick was this guy planning to play today? Because he had dealt with too many sinister people like Kyoji who couldn't hide things on his face naturally couldn't escape Ryuto's discerning eyes. As for what this father-in-law number 2 was planning to do, when he took out a large test paper filled with questions, Ryuto finally understood. Chapter 368. Ahem, everyone, friends and family, I'm very happy to be able to gather with you today and participate in the Tsukimi family's traditional marriage proposal test. After Ryudo and his son were seated, Kyoji slowly stood up from the host's seat and spoke to the large group of gossiping women in the hall. Marriage proposal test? The moment Ryuto and Kazuma heard this special term, they couldn't help but look at each other. They both saw the surprise in each other's eyes. After that, Kyoji arranged for the servants to distribute the test paper full of questions to friends and family, as well as to Ryuto and his son. Kazuma looked at the test paper full of strange questions in his hand and paused for a second. Then, he had an expression of disbelief. Obviously, the former team leader of the Rulon group couldn't imagine that his son was here to propose a marriage. Why did it suddenly become a scientific research test? The most important thing was that the questions written on the paper were all top-level problems in philosophy, mathematics, psychology, and other fields. Forget about Ryuto, who was just a high school student. Even a PhD professor who specialized in these things might not be able to answer them. Wasn't this deliberately making things difficult for people? What was even stranger was that the group of relatives and friends who came to watch the ceremony, such as first uncle, second uncle, third uncle, fourth aunt, fifth aunt, and so on, seemed to be able to understand the things on the examination papers. It was an eye-opener. Oh, isn't this the Sitapan conjecture? Although it has been solved, it's still quite a famous problem in the mathematics world. The relationship between Wittgenstein philosophy and artificial intelligence philosophy. Such a deep research topic, can a young man really answer it? Also, what did the Rorschach inkblot test reflect on the relationship between psychoanalysis theory? Wasn't this a topic discussed at the Melbourne Psychology Conference not long ago? Don't be fooled by the looks of these middle-aged and elderly people who gathered here. All of them looked like aunties selling vegetables or uncles walking their birds. However, when they saw the difficult questions on these examination papers, they immediately transformed into experts and professors and began to comment on them. The Tsukimi family was a very famous scientific family. Most of the people in the family were either professors or scholars. Their breadth and depth of knowledge was absolutely unquestionable. This time, the group of people invited by Kyoji were even the elites of the family. A few of them even won the Gunpowder Bomb Science Award, so when they saw the test paper, they were naturally able to comment. Of course, this group of academic elites was deliberately invited by Kyoji to watch Ryuto make a fool of himself. What should I do? Ryuto. Can he pass this test? Looking at the group of gossipy women who started to discuss those incomprehensible questions, Yima hurriedly turned his head to look at the son he was proud of. Then, the old man saw a confident smile appear on Long Do's face. Yes, a confident smile. Even in the face of such a complicated test paper, the leader of the Black Hand Alliance was still brimming with confidence as if he had already seen through everything. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect my son to be a great scientist. Facing such a complicated question, he could still calmly give an answer. Then, Kazuma whispered to Ryuto, I didn't expect you to have such high academic attainments. I underestimated you. Kazuma himself wasn't educated, so he especially admired those who were educated. If that educated person happened to be his son, then it would be even better. He felt like he had taken advantage of the situation. Academic attainments? What do you mean? However, when Long Do heard his father's words that were filled with admiration, he looked at him in confusion. The reason why you're so confident, isn't it because you think you can answer these questions? How is that possible? I can't even understand the things on this paper. It's like a book from heaven. This. When he heard his son's words, Kazuma's slightly admiring expression was instantly shattered. Good heavens, Ima thought that Long Do was showing this expression because he was confident, but he didn't expect that he couldn't understand it at all. If you don't understand at all, then why are you so happy? If there weren't so many gossipy women staring at the father and son, Yima really wanted to say this to his son. Just when the former leader of the Rulon group couldn't hold it in anymore, Kyoji, who was sitting in the main seat, looked at the man who might become his future son-in-law with a happy expression. Does Kyoji like Ryuto? Of course he doesn't. That's why he deliberately prepared these questions that a high school student couldn't answer. It was to embarrass this kid in front of everyone. Does Ryuto know Kyoji's intention? Of course he knows. It's clear with a glance. Good heavens, are you trying to show me who's boss? Okay, as you wish. Looking at Tsukujiri Kyoji's joyful expression as if he couldn't answer Long Do's question, as well as the expectant expressions of the surrounding aunties, the left corner of Long Do's mouth slightly raised, revealing a special smile. People who were familiar with him knew that when Ryuto showed this smile, it meant his time to show off had begun. Move, I'm going to show off. Ahem. Just when Gong Si was about to enjoy Ryudo's embarrassed expression, Ryudo cleared his throat slightly, smiled, and said to everyone present, Since father-in-law thinks so highly of me, then I will make a fool of myself. What? Is this guy? After feeling Ryu's confidence, the smile on Gong Si's face froze. He originally wanted to watch Ryu make a fool of himself. No way. I gave him a profound question that involved so many subjects, he couldn't possibly think that he could answer it, right? Impossible, absolutely impossible. Thinking of this, Kyoji couldn't help but remind himself. What kind of person is Ryuto Kiryu? You probably don't know what an illiterate person is. I, Kyoji, would only use this word to describe this kind of person, Ryuto Kiryu. I always say that Ryuto Kiryu isn't stupid, he's actually quite smart, but he just doesn't want to study hard. Indeed, that guy is an extreme boss, he has to deal with a lot of practical problems, that's right. But even so, he can't be illiterate. Especially when he heard that this guy couldn't even recognize all the English letters, Kyoji almost coughed up blood on the spot. High school student, this is the second year of the first high school. Can't recognize all the English letters? This kind of stupid, illiterate person wants to be the son-in-law of the Tsukini family? Then how can our family meet people in the future? What? You're saying that this kind of illiterate Ryuto Kiryu can answer all the questions I gave him? Nonsense, he can't even do a high school exam. How can he answer a PhD level question? I, Kyoji Tsukujiri, will leave my words here. If Dragon Fight can solve all these questions today, I, Kyoji Tsukujiri, will eat this exam paper on the spot. Eat the whole paper. Unknowingly, Gong Si couldn't help but think this, and made a ruthless vow. Unfortunately, although Ryuto was half illiterate, he had wisdom level 5, and he was an illiterate person who was unique in terms of cheating. Under the gaze of hundreds of people, Ryuto first cleared his throat, then began to answer the first question. Regarding the Sitapan conjecture, the core problem is that for all n-top graphs, there is a clique of k-tops or an independent set of l-tops. The smallest natural number n with this property is called a Ramsey number, and it is described in the theory of coloring. When Ryudo's confusing words came out of his mouth, Gongxi's face turned green. It was as if his wife had run away with someone else. Kyoji was originally a top talent in mathematics, philosophy, psychology, mechanical science, and many other fields. Since he could come up with these questions, it meant that he was very knowledgeable in this area. In this situation, Gongxi only needed to listen for a bit to know that Long Do's answer was on point. When he said, "To solve this conjecture, you only need to use the Ramsey 2 coloring theorem in reverse inference mathematics to prove it." The process is as follows. The CEO of Tsukujiri Group almost fell off his chair. "Hey, be careful, you can't sit still." Zhenqin quickly supported her husband, who almost fell to the ground. She looked at his pale face and couldn't help but ask, "What? Ryuto-san's answer is ridiculously wrong? Why do you sound like this?" Zhenqin herself was in the entertainment industry, so she naturally didn't understand these complex academic questions. However, after seeing her husband's embarrassed look, she seemed to have the wrong idea. She thought Ryuto was ridiculously wrong. After Kyoji was helped up, he reached out and pushed up his glasses that were already soaked in sweat. He awkwardly said, "No. Nothing, let's look at the next question." The question just now was about mathematics. Maybe Ryuto knows a lot about mathematics? The next question was about philosophy. He definitely didn't know anything about philosophy. The essence of Wittgenstein's philosophy is that it believes that the world is the collection of everything. Even the concept outside the world is a part of the world. The world exists in thinking. If people don't think, they can't solve problems. This extends to... Poof. When Kyoji heard Ryuto explain a profound philosophical question in front of everyone, Kyoji felt his insides heat up and almost spat out blood. You mother****. Are you really Ryuto Kiryu? Kyoji felt like he was drunk when he saw the person he thought was ignorant and couldn't even recognize the alphabet give a speech and explanation in front of a group of professors. Especially when Ryuto easily solved the second, third, fourth, and even the last question, Kyoji fell to the ground like a pile of mud. He didn't even have the strength to speak. His eyes became empty, and his mind went blank. At the last moment, the only thing Kyoji thought about was, how should he swallow the test paper in his hand? Would it taste better if he dipped it in ketchup? Chapter 369. Impossible. Impossible. How is this possible? Kyoji would rather believe that he was dreaming than believe that Ryuto could answer all these complex questions. From a scholar's point of view, Ryuto's answers were logical and impeccable. Even if Kyoji answered it himself, he would have the same feeling. But the person who answered it was Ryuto. It was the leader of the Rulon group, the incompetent hoodlum leader, Ryuto Kiryu. It was like you took a banana and hung it on the roof to entice a monkey. You wanted to see the monkey jump up and down. In the end, the monkey turned his head and revealed a mocking expression. With a leap, he soared into the sky and plucked the banana on the spot. He even wanted to eat it all in front of you before throwing the banana skin at your face. In short, when Ryudo passed all of his father-in-law's tests in such a dignified manner, a thunderous applause came from the main hall. Beautiful! To have such talent at such a young age. No wonder he's the son-in-law of the Tsukiji family. Who was the one who said that the Dragon Fighter Lord was ignorant and incompetent? Wasn't it Kyoji? Ha ha ha, it means that guy also has times when he makes a mistake. Maybe he didn't make a mistake. Maybe he was jealous because his daughter was snatched away, which led him to spout nonsense. For a moment, the Tsukiji family's intellectuals in the main hall applauded in admiration. They laughed and talked about the enemies between Ryuto and Kyoji. It had to be said that after learning that his daughter was pregnant, Kyoji did complain a lot about Ryuto to his relatives after he was drunk. Among them was that the guy was incompetent and was almost illiterate, which left a deep impression on many people. After all, the Tsukiji family was a family with a strong academic atmosphere. How could they allow an illiterate person in the family? That would be too shameful. But in fact, after seeing Long Do with their own eyes and hearing his explanation, almost all of his relatives were in awe of his talent. Look, this is only a 17-year-old young man. To have such an exaggerated amount of knowledge at such a young age, and to be able to adapt to the situation and use it flexibly, this kid will definitely become someone great in the future. However, just as the group of relatives surrounded the father and son duo and warmly congratulated them, the initiator of this farce, Tsukujiri Kyoji, gasped for breath while clutching his heart. Infuriating. 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 If it wasn't for the fact that Gong Si was still young and his heart wasn't damaged, he might have been angered to death on the spot. That kid must have cheated. He must have cheated in some way. Otherwise, even if you beat me to death, I won't believe he has real knowledge in this area. But how did Ryuto cheat? Gong Si couldn't figure it out. After all, those questions were prepared on the spur of the moment, and there was no draft in advance. Naturally, there was no risk of the questions being leaked. Then how did Long Do memorize all the answers to the questions in just a few minutes after receiving the test paper? No matter what, this was something that was impossible, right? Humph, humph, humph. Can't figure it out? That's right. Sensing the incredulous gaze of his second father-in-law, Long Do, who was surrounded by enthusiastic aunts and aunts asking him when he would have his second child, third child, and fourth child, revealed a strange smile to Gong Si. Of course, Ryuto cheated. If he didn't cheat, how could he answer those questions? Then how did Ryuto cheat? He cheated with his life. In fact, this was the 5th time he saw the test paper. When he saw the test paper for the first time in the dragon battle, he knew that he would definitely not be able to answer all the questions. Therefore, he immediately used the excuse of going to the bathroom to contact Sensible. He told Sensible to search the internet for the answers as soon as possible. Fortunately, all the questions Kyoji chose were questions that had already been answered by the academic community. As long as he looked carefully, he would be able to find a similar thesis. After finding a part of the answers, Ryuto used the excuse of going to the bathroom for a long time. Therefore, he decided to kill himself and reopen the door. He came to the Suki no Suki and asked Sensible to help him find the answers again. After repeating this several times, Dragon's Fight finally collected all the answers in the book. With his extraordinary memory and LV5 wisdom, he quickly memorized and mastered everything in the book. In an instant, he became an ultimate academic master. Just like that, Kyoji's scheme failed. In this situation where all his friends and family were present, he could only discuss the details of their children's marriage with Kazuma. This situation was quite humiliating for Kyoji. It was a day of humiliation. At this time, Ryuto, the initiator of Kyoji's humiliation, was led to the back of the house by his mother-in-law, Zhanchin, to the door of Yunyen's room. Okay. After bringing Ryuto here, Zhanchin smiled and said, "The tedious traditions are almost done. Next, I'll give you two some private time together." Since Ryuto decided to propose not long ago, Yunyen hadn't seen him for many days. The two missed each other. As a woman, Zhanchin naturally understood her daughter's thoughts. Therefore, she picked up the keycard and opened the door. She quietly let Ryuto in. Speaking of Yunyen's room, Ryuto was very familiar with it. Back then, when he first came here, the things that happened were unforgettable. As for Long Do, it was also the first time he knew that senior sister Yunyen actually knew how to play. Cough cough. Just thinking about that scene was unbearable. So, after opening the door, he slipped in stealthily, and went in as quietly as possible. Because it was daytime, the lights in the room weren't turned on. However, the curtains were drawn tightly, causing the light in the room to be dim. Ryuto's shifty eyes slowly scanned the dark room. Then, he saw many things that weren't placed here before. The large white oak table was scattered with all kinds of baby clothes of various sizes. These small clothes seemed to have been properly ironed with an iron. The clothes were embroidered and pasted with all kinds of patterns. They looked very beautiful. The originally ordinary windows had been replaced with large pieces of colored glass, and the walls were also redecorated with pink wallpaper. It looked colorful and rather cute. A large crib was next to Yunyen's bed. If Ryuto wasn't mistaken, there seemed to be an automatic rocking music and an electric drive system under the crib. It was like a small car. No way, right? It's only been 2 months? You've prepared everything so quickly? When he saw the exaggerated furnishings and objects in Yunyen's room, Ryuto really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Indeed, since Yunyen was confirmed to be pregnant, the Tsuchikami family had been very nervous about her. That feeling was really like being afraid of falling when walking, being afraid of being pressed when sleeping, and even not letting Yunyen take a bath by herself. They had to arrange for several maids to serve her. Yunyen felt like she had become a useless person. She also complained, "It's only been 2 months and they don't let me do this and that. If it's 5 or 6 months, won't I be unable to walk?" However, no matter how much Yunyen complained, the family's supervision of her didn't stop. In fact, it was getting more and more intense. But even so, Ryuto didn't expect that the family would prepare a full set of childcare products when the child was only 2 months old. Wasn't this a bit too exaggerated? Perhaps it wasn't exaggerated because just beside the desk near the windowsill in the room, Ryuto saw an even more exaggerated scene. He, la la la. In the dim room, a somewhat strange song reached Ryuto's ears. The woman sitting at the desk holding something and humming was wearing a loose milky white dress. Her fluffy brown hair fell on her shoulders, and her eyes were slightly narrowed. Her expression seemed to be very focused. Even if someone sneaked into the room, she didn't have the slightest reaction. Instead, her attention was focused on the baby in her arms. Ryuto walked over and saw that Yunyen was holding and playing with a fake baby. In front of her were a series of childcare books such as 10 Comfortable Ways to Hold a Baby and Introduction to Motherhood, 3 Songs to Put a Baby to Sleep. Logically speaking, Yunyen was at least 7 or 8 months away from giving birth. She didn't have the right to say that her parents were too nervous when she started reading such books so early. She didn't seem to be any better. Good heavens! So she was learning how to take care of a child? Seeing Yunyen's serious and focused look, Ryuto felt a little funny at first. Then, he was attracted by the strong maternal aura emitted from her body. So beautiful. Although Yunyen was also very beautiful normally, and her temperament was even on the level of an angel, after being pregnant and having a slight bump on her stomach, she seemed to be even more beautiful. Especially when he saw her holding the fake baby for practice and singing softly, swaying the swaddling clothes left and right in her arms. Ryuto couldn't help but slowly walk over from behind and reach out to hug Yunyen's shoulder. Yunyen Xin. Ya. Before Ryuto could finish the sentence, Yunyen, thank you for your hard work, Yunyen, who was indulging in the joy of coaxing the baby, suddenly screamed. Then, she threw the swaddling clothes in her hands at Ryuto's face. In that instant, Yunyen's strong maternal instinct disappeared. After all, a mother who used a child to smash her father's head was more or less a little violent. Chapter 370. What? It turns out to be Ryuto, I'm very sorry. When Yunyen finally came to her senses and realized that she had hit the child's father with her child, she hurriedly apologized and reached out to rub Long Do's forehead. Ryuto held her soft palm and smiled. What's wrong? Have you been practicing how to take care of the child at home recently? Isn't this a little too early? It's not early. Recently, my stomach seems to have bulged a little, and I always feel that he is moving around in my stomach. At this time, Yunyen reached out and touched her belly that was still flat. In fact, there was no bulge at all, and said in a gentle tone. Of course, the belly of a 2-month pregnant woman generally didn't change much, and the thing in the belly wouldn't move around. It was all just Yunyen's psychological effect. But Ryuto naturally wouldn't say such boring words. Instead, he hugged Yunyen in his arms and also reached out to touch the belly that was pregnant with his first child. And Yunyen also leaned her head on her lover's shoulder, enjoying the peace of the two of them at this moment. In a dim room with various childcare products, the two men and women who were about to get married snuggled together, and the air was full of romance. However, because Yunyen was now in a pregnant state, the intimacy between the two was only superficial. They separated after a little tenderness, so as not to affect the baby. By the way, my dad is outside discussing the details of the marriage with your parents. Do you have any suggestions in this regard? Watching Yunyen put the fake baby used for practice back into the stroller, Ryuto sat on her bed and asked with a smile. Generally speaking, marriage was a matter of two people, but it was not entirely a matter of two people. It was a matter of two families. Especially for Ryuto, it was even more complicated. He was going to marry 3 women at the same time, which involved a strong combination of 4 families. Therefore, there were many things that could be argued about the venue and the form of the wedding. It was simply endless. Hearing this, Yunyen nodded and said, "We have more foreign relatives in our family, and the education we received is more Western. My parents mentioned before that if possible, it is more appropriate to hold a Western-style wedding." A Western-style wedding was not unreasonable. Speaking of which, although there were many types of weddings, Western-style weddings were still the most accepted type. Almost every place could accept it. Of course, although Yunyen said so, colored glaze and dunias were not necessarily so. Ryuto had to ask them one by one and discuss it with them one by one to confirm it. Therefore, the matters in the Tsukini Koden were almost solved. Next, he had to go to the Saito and Kansai Yuan. Before leaving, Long-Do took out a special ring from his portable space and knelt down on one knee in front of senior sister Yunyen. He proposed to her one step later than Long-Do did. "Miss Yuejian Li Yunyen, although it's a bit late to say this, are you willing to marry me?" This time, Ryuto took out a double-layer bead chain diamond ring inlaid with a 1-carat pink diamond. It was different from the engagement rings given to the 3 before. In the design of the engagement ring, the 3 used red, blue, and yellow gems respectively, and of course, eternity and wallet crematorium diamonds were used on the wedding ring. Speaking of which, it was strange. Although Long-Do had given the 3 of them engagement rings before, he had never proposed to them. So this was the first time he solemnly gave a promise to his wife. As for why Yunyen was the first candidate to propose, it had something to do with the baby in her belly. The mother of the baby still had some privileges. After seeing the ring, Yunyen couldn't help but smile. Her clear eyes seemed to be smiling. "We're already an old couple, why do you still want to do this?" However, she still held out her hand in a very ritualistic manner and nodded. "I do." As the diamond ring was personally put on Yunyen's finger by Ryuto, the marriage proposal ceremony was completed. The next event was Ryuto taking his fiancée out to receive the celebration of his family and friends. After seeing the shiny diamond ring on Yunyen's finger, many people gave the two their blessings. Even Kyoji, who was angry to the point of having a brain hemorrhage, could only sigh and admit the reality. After everyone had a lively dinner in the Tsukini Koden, Kazuma and Ryuto, the father and son, took the car home drunk. Those scientists, professors, and scholars were too good at drinking. On the way back, Ryuto couldn't help but think. After all, Ryuto's alcohol tolerance was really high. He was the one who usually accompanied Dunia to drink vodka. To be able to make such an old drunkard drunk, it was obvious how fierce those people were when it came to persuading people to drink. But no matter what, the Tsukini family's matter was settled. The marriage with Yunyen had been finalized. They only needed to discuss some details. It was just that one family was finished, and there were still 2 more that hadn't started yet. This long road of marriage proposal was only 1/3 complete. So in the early morning of the second day, Ryuto, who was hungover, once again sat in Narukai's car with Kazuma and drove to the second family's residence, the Saitu Hall. On the way to the Saitu Hall, Kazuma reminded, I once heard from Takashi that if someone wants to marry his daughter, he has to prove that he is a real man. So they should have another test. The test of the Sai-2 Hall, as long as it's not about scientific research or academics, it's fine. Thinking of the exam paper that forced him to reopen 5 times yesterday, Ryuto still felt a little headache. After all, with so many academic papers, even if it was just memorizing and understanding them, it would take a lot of energy. But compared to the Tsukini family, the Sai-2 family should be better. After all, they were a group of martial artists. The test of martial artists. At most, they would fight. With the current strength of Ryuto's fist and kick, he was almost invincible in the world. To put it bluntly, the entire Sai-2 Hall might not be able to defeat him even if all the members came together. So for the so-called test of the Sai-2 family, Ryuto basically didn't care much. Until the father and son came to the gate of the Sai-2 Hall and saw a long line of people standing at the gate to welcome them. Sai-2 Hall was currently the largest martial arts organization in the country, and it was also the most famous martial arts club in the country. According to the statistics, the Sai-2 Guild Hall had more than 20,000 apprentices in the Tokyo region alone. Their sphere of influence was simply ridiculously large, and the number of elite soldiers under them was innumerable. However, even so, Ryuto didn't expect that when their exclusive car of the Rulon Group drove to the street, both sides of the street were already filled with rows of strong men in training clothes. That's right, they were on both sides of the street. Thousands of Sai-2 Guild's apprentices lined up on both sides of the street like a guard of honor welcoming guests. It made Ryudo and Kazuma's car feel like they were surrounded by people from all directions when they drove past. How should this situation be described? Are they crazy? Because Yima had already told Wu Hong's old friend that he was going to propose marriage in the morning, so this matter must be arranged by Wu Hong's president. But who would find thousands of apprentices to line up on both sides of the street just to welcome their son-in-law to propose marriage? Isn't there something wrong with their brain, or they have nothing to do? Especially when they arrived at the entrance of the huge building of the Sai-2 Guild Hall, the scene that appeared made the father and son even more dumbfounded. As the largest dojo in Tokyo, the main building of the Sai-2 Guild Hall was naturally quite magnificent. It was a 9-story building with a wide area. Although the decoration was not luxurious, it was very rigid. There was even a tiger skin placed at the door, which looked very dignified. At this time, the current president Sai-2 Takahiro was standing in front of the tiger skin, standing on the stairs, looking down at Ryuto and Yima who got out of the car. Around Sai-2 Takahiro, there were also members wearing Sai-2 Hall's training clothes. But these members were basically wearing a black belt, and it seemed that their status was much higher than the group of people outside. Seeing the stunned father and son finally came to the door, Takahiro laughed and said, "Ha ha ha ha. Tong Shang Yima, Ryuto Kiryu, long time no see. No, I just looked for you to drink the night before yesterday. How is it long time no see?" Hearing this sentence, Yima couldn't help but rub the back of his head and ridicule. But Takahiro obviously didn't intend to answer him, and said, "However, if you want to be the son-in-law of my Sai-2 family, it's not that simple. You have to accept a series of strict tests and prove that you are a real man." Whoa. A real man. A real man. A real man. Suddenly, the group of apprentices around Takahiro began to shout loudly. At first glance, the scene looked very imposing, but thinking about it carefully, it was very Chinibu. Long Do, on the other hand, had already expected this. He smiled and said, "Then what's the test like?" "Just say it, I don't care." Humph, after hearing Ryuto's tone, Takahiro coldly snorted and said, "Do you see this building? My daughter is waiting for you on the rooftop. So, as long as you can climb to the top of the building and see Dunya, you'll win. However, every floor of the building is filled with the strongest fighters of my Sai-2 Guild, and you'll have to defeat 9 of them." Originally, Takahiro wanted to say, "You have to defeat 9 opponents before you can go to the top of the building," but before he finished speaking, Ryuto's body directly jumped to the top of the doorpost on the first floor. "As long as I go to the top of the building, it's easy. Bye, I'll go first." Before the people downstairs could react, Long Do's figure madly rushed up the outside of the building under their stunned gazes. The scene looked like Spider-Man climbing the building. It was effortless. Chapter 371. What is this thing? Is he really a human? Looking at Ryudo's figure actually climbing and jumping from the outside of the vertical building, the group of Saito Guild Hall's warriors below were all stunned. Especially Saito Takahiro, who proposed this tower climbing challenge. His mouth was wide open, like a fish out of water. It was quite a comical sight. No, I did ask you to climb the tower, but I didn't ask you to climb the tower like this. Originally, Saito Takahiro had expected the Ryujin duel to be like a challenge in a game, going up to the top floor of the Saito Guild Hall. Every floor they passed, they would encounter a powerful opponent. Although he might not be able to defeat the son-in-law of the Saito family after 9 matches, at least he would be able to create momentum, and the whole process would benefit the martial artists a lot. But who would have thought that Ryuto didn't want to fight with them at all? Instead, he chose to climb the tower. They asked him to climb up from the inside floor by floor, but he climbed up from the outside floor by floor. But it has to be said that Ryuto's climbing movements were really cool. His body was like a flexible flea flying on the outside of the stairs. From time to time, he would grab the windowsill to jump up, or he would step on the outside of the air conditioner to rush up more than 10 meters. He was actually climbing crazily on the outside of the completely vertical building. This scene really stunned everyone around, but they couldn't help but feel their scalps tingle from his nimble movements. No, if he goes up like this, won't it mean that our Saito Guild headquarters will lose a lot? Thinking of this, Takahiro took a deep breath and shouted to the surrounding students, "Go! This is Ryuto, Kuin's challenge to us, we can't fall behind. Hurry up and catch up with him." Hearing the president's words, a deputy director couldn't help but ask, Catch up with him? From here. As he said, he pointed to the outside of the vertical Saito Guild headquarters building, as if wondering if the president was joking. Just from here. This is a real man's challenge. I'll go first. Takahiro also nodded, then quickly turned his head and jumped up. He jumped to the beam next to the main entrance of the first floor and began to climb up with difficulty. The dignified president of the Saito Guild Hall actually began to play unprotected bare-handed climbing outside his own building. This scene seemed quite ridiculous. However, since President Saito had stepped forward, the other students naturally couldn't fall behind. Charge. If you're a man, then follow me. Damn it. Wasn't it just climbing a wall? Isn't it just a 9-story building? What's so great about that? Is this what a real man is like? I want to stand at the top of the world. The next moment, the crowd began to rush toward the doorposts, windowsills, and beams outside the building. He imitated the male assessment, conducted by his own president. Are you kidding me? Was there something wrong with their brains? Suddenly, Yima, who was standing at the back, couldn't help but be dumbstruck, as if he didn't know what to say for a moment. That day, the headquarters of the Saito Guild Hall was very lively. Led by President Saito Takahiro, a group of students climbed up the outside of the building barehanded. The outside of the building was densely packed with people, so it attracted a large number of people to watch from afar, and it also attracted the police and the fire department. After countless students climbed to the height of the second and third floor, they couldn't climb any higher, and they kept falling down on the cushions prepared in advance. This assessment that no one could pass finally came to an end under the mandatory prohibition of the police. Of course, although the students of the Saito Guild Hall didn't become real men that day, this unique male assessment was passed down in the sect and became a tradition. From that day onwards, on this day every year, countless students from all over the country would flock to this place, attempting to climb the 9-story Saito Guild Hall headquarters with their bare hands. They would be proud of the height they climbed. The first man who climbed to the top barehanded, Ryuto Kiryu, had already become a legendary figure in the Saito Guild Hall, and he was called the God of Barehanded Climbing. Although Ryuto didn't want this title at all. However, the popularity of this male assessment was a matter of the future. At this time, Ryuto was quickly jumping on the roof, climbing to the top of the building in the shortest time. Going up to the top of the 9-story building, the first thing that caught Ryuto's eyes was a huge open-air square, and in the center of the square was a huge ring. Yes, the ring was made of simple stone bricks, about 1 meter high, about 200 meters in length and width, and there were flags that symbolized the Saitu clan around the ring. There was no doubt that the meaning of the ring was for people to fight. However, the person sitting in the center of the ring wasn't the group of burly men in training clothes from the 9 floors below, but a petite young girl. This young girl had silver hair that was as pure and kind as the Milky Way. Her fair and translucent skin, coupled with her slightly tender appearance and delicate hands and feet, made her look like a large doll that made people want to love her tenderly. However, just when Ryuto stepped over there, the doll-like girl, Saitu Dunya, slowly opened her eyes. "You came? I have been waiting for you for a long time." She slowly opened her mouth, but her tone was full of fighting spirit that Ryuto didn't expect. Fighting spirit? Why does Dunya have such an aura? Logically speaking, Ryuto came here today to propose marriage, and Dunya of course knew about it, so why did she have such an attitude? But now Ryuto wasn't stupid, especially when he knew Dunya very well. He understood her meaning. "So that's how it is. Is this the final test for me to propose this marriage? It's not the Saitu clan's test, but your test," Ryuto said as he walked toward the large ring on the top of the 9-floor building, and he casually took off the tie around his neck to prevent it from being a hindrance during the fight. This was a test, or rather, a challenge. This was Dunya's test for her future husband, and also a challenge for her future husband. Whoosh! Boom! The moment Ryuto walked onto the ring, Dunya's petite body suddenly floated into the air, and a pair of slender legs landed on the ring, and actually cracked the thick stone floor of the ring. Yes, this is my test, and also my challenge. I really want to know if the gap in our strength is as big as I imagined, so please allow me to be willful one last time. Dunya moved her front legs forward, squatted slightly, and raised her arms, and assumed a common fighting posture of the Saitu school of Paleo martial arts. For Dunya, as a martial artist, there were not many opponents in this world that she could find, and Ryuto was the target that she had been chasing ever since she started practicing martial arts. From the Emperor Hotel kidnapping case, to the 12 hours late-night pursuit, to the Tianmu Manor chaotic battle, not long ago, Dunya had always been looking at Ryuto's back. Speaking of which, Dunya's martial arts were basically taught by Saitu Takahiro and Furamaki Sotaro. Ryuto did not teach her much, but Dunya had always treated him as her life mentor. After this short period of time, Dunya's strength could be said to have taken a qualitative leap, and had reached the true inhuman level. But every time she saw Ryuto, she would think, if she and Ryuto were to go all out, who would win in the end? Therefore, taking advantage of the time when the other party came to propose marriage, before the two of them became husband and wife, Dunya decisively challenged her future husband. She wanted to be sure that her future husband's strength was above hers. Only by fulfilling this wish, Dunya could completely accept her new identity as Ryuto's wife. These things, Dunya did not need to explain. When Ryuto saw her eyes, he already had a rough idea, so his response was very straightforward. "Come, let's fight to our heart's content." At this time, Ryuto also got into a serious stance, and adjusted his emotions to the peak of the battle. For a moment, on the stage, the two of them just stood there without moving, their eyes fixed on each other, but the surrounding atmosphere had a qualitative change in an instant. Do-chi, the aura of the two of them seemed to have turned into an invisible do-chi, and the first wave of fierce confrontation in the air had already begun. The battle of aura was a very important part of the battle between experts. Whoever's aura was at a disadvantage, then the next move would be firmly suppressed by the other, and fall into an initial disadvantage. At this time, Ryuto and Dunya, who were fighting, both of them were at the top of the world's martial artists, the peak of human physical fitness. This was a battle between two LV5 physique, extreme superhuman, a battle between the peak of human beings. Moreover, the two of them were proficient in different schools. If they really fought, there would be a lot of variables. Ryuto was best at Ancient 8 Extreme Fist and Bone-Twisting Dragon Hand. Dunya was best at Saito-style Palea martial arts and Furamaki-style martial arts. But because Ryuto was also proficient in Furamaki-style martial arts, if they really fought, he would definitely have the absolute advantage. She had to disrupt his rhythm, or she would lose without a doubt. In the next moment, when the two of them were evenly matched, Dunya's figure finally moved first. The girl's upper body did not move, but with an extremely gentle and graceful movement, she quickly slid forward on the ground. Her posture was like a swan playing in water, so light that it made people think that she was a fairy from the lake. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.